15th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion.
Can I have a second? All in favor? Okay, the board will enter into executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation, as well as to discuss a subject that, if disclosed, would jeopardize the health and safety of the students and staff, namely the building-wide safety plan. Can I have a motion to enter exec?
Motion to enter exec.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, the board will be back at approximately 7 p.m. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, November 15th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. I am sorry that we kept you waiting. Our executive session ran a little bit over time. Can I please have a motion to approve the agenda this evening?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, before we get going, let's stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening is a work session, so there's no public comment. We do have a small consent agenda. Does anybody have anything to pull from the consent agenda? Nothing? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Can I have a second? All in favor? All right, at this time, we'll begin our work session. And I'll let Mr. Conley set the stage.
Thank you. So this evening's work session will continue our discussion on proposed elementary reconfiguration plans. At the last meeting, we used a series of focus questions to help the board guide and frame discussions on priority to help shape any plans that could be considered not in alignment with those priorities of the board. We'll continue the same approach tonight, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Dennis Lauro, who will read an opening statement to help frame this evening's discussions before we bring the focus questions to the floor. Dr. Lauro?
Yes, thank you. I decided to write it so that I made sure I captured everything, so forgive me for reading it to you, but I have the copy if you need it. As we begin tonight's deliberation on the restructuring of the school district's school use, it behooves everyone to look at where we've been and where we are going. Firstly, when I arrived here as acting superintendent in late February, the board and the public were engaged in a dialogue over whether the current elementary banding model, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, was an adequate configuration in meeting the goals and objectives of the Board of Education. The current concerns expressed were that 2 years at each building was creating concern over the number of transitions, particularly for the younger elementary students in the early childhood years. Additionally, comments were also expressed about too long of a bus ride to and from school for the youngest of students, creating further negative comments from those parents who were affected by this change. Other comments included the benefits of the plan, mainly it brought all students together by grade in one building. As a result, there were no issues over equity and equality as everyone received the same services under one roof. There were other concerns and supportive comments. Both these primarily represent the larger issues. Fast forward to the present day, after much discussion and input from various stakeholders had occurred, we find ourselves trying to decide why the board imposed deadline of December 6, 2023 to align with the budget building process that begins shortly thereafter. This date was intentionally chosen to allow for any plan to be fully vetted and funded through the budget process to avoid any financial shortfalls in the instructional and facility needs of any of the plans adopted. The major concern expressed by several stakeholder groups was that their voices were not heard by the board before they were to make any change to the current model. In the spring, the board confirmed them by not changing the existing model and allowing it to continue this current school year, the second year of the banding plan. In the meantime, as outlined and recently posted to the district's website, many opportunities for input from teachers and the community alike were conducted by the board to permit these voices to be heard and for the board to consider them in their current deliberations. These opportunities also included several work sessions with expert consultants in early childhood education that addressed some of these same issues and gave a perspective based on facts and research to address the board and the public in understanding the complexities of early childhood education and the needs of these students. One important step was the board's willingness to create a policy that established site-based councils that included administrators, teachers, and parents. These councils have received training in how to conduct business, arrive at consensus, and provide input into those things that support student learning and achievement. It is expected that these councils will continue well into the future, providing a more permanent vehicle for direct input to the board. There should never be a reason for anyone to say that the board was not listening or did not hear from the various stakeholder groups. The HHEA, the teachers union, the PTA representing parents have all endorsed this concept. Everyone looks forward to a long period of involvement in helping bring back higher achievement levels for all students. Tonight's meeting is a continuation of this process that will allow the board to consider a set of questions that are posed to them regarding policy decisions that will affect any plan that is proposed and ultimately voted on by the board. This evening, the board has these questions that focus on class size limits, grade level placement, facility usage, school capacities, sustainability of any plan, and how any plan will fit their desire to maintain equity and equality in the district's programs and that are dependent on how the schools are configured. I remind the board and the public that any considerations at this point should and must address the impact on the budget as soon will begin the budget process. Because overall, either the past board or the current board, because the overall concern being that the board, past and present, have fiduciary responsibility to create a budget that meets the needs of all students while adhering to your commitment to deliver a budget that will be supported by the community at the adoption of the budget in May. Knowing that the constraints of the budget process, given in particular the adjustments that have to be made with the closing of Indian Point and the loss of substantial amount of revenue, the board must consider putting forth a reasonable budget that meets all the needs and concerns. I've had the opportunity of working with you for 9 months, and I know that you are concerned with providing the best educational program that meets the needs of all students while being financially responsible to all taxpayers of the Hendrick Hudson School District. With this understanding and backdrop to today's deliberations, I ask that you begin to examine the remaining plans that are still under consideration and keep in mind that the decision you make should take the district well into the future. Realizing that there are always changing demographics, limited space with existing buildings, and concern over the budget, your answer to today's questions will help the administration assist you in reaching your decision on December 6th, or the deadline. The administration will do all that is possible to provide answers to your questions and the data needed to make a final decision. It is extremely important to reach decision, get the support of all stakeholders, and move the Hendrick Hudson School District ahead. In the past, the district was overly consumed with the shift from 3 neighborhood schools to this banding model. The evidence was the number of concerned stakeholders that attended meetings and addressed their concerns directly to the board. Now is the time to take all of this input and the future input of the next set of meetings that will occur later this month before the meeting in December, on December 6th, where the decision will be made. Take all of this into account and put forth the best possible plan that will represent a compromise, as you cannot satisfy everyone, but it is important to allow the district to move from this issue to the concerns I've expressed over student achievement and levels of student proficiency. It can be done, but only after this question of which configuration will take the district well into the future that will be sustained with the best use of existing buildings, a budget that will provide the best educational program for all students and meet the mission and vision of the district. And I'll just remind you of what the mission statement says, because we recently dealt with a minor change on it in the spring, but just to read it into the record. The mission of the Hendrick Hudson School District, a dynamic, innovative, and supportive educational community, is to ensure each student is engaged, passionate learner who achieves their maximum potential and contributes to society. This is accomplished in a system characterized by a culture of highest expectations for all students, a rigorous articulated curriculum, diverse, effective instructional strategies and resources, an educational environment that is challenging, creative, exploratory, accessible, and nurturing, and a fully engaged, supportive community. I truly feel and know that this board can and will adopt a plan that will be the best possible one for the students of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laurel. I appreciate the looking back on what has been accomplished and also looking forward to why this decision is so important to have by the deadline. And again, we continue that work this evening. So in accordance with the approach we took last time on November 1st, where we're using focus questions to guide the discussion, we've developed, with your assistance, a series of focus questions. The first one being, does the Board of Education wish to confirm the adherence to the present class size policy, or do you wish to change it? Again, this is meant to generate discussions, help prioritize characteristics of a plan we're looking for to help articulate that and assist the administration in providing you with additional data that you may need to meet those priorities. As a reminder, I'll read into the record, and for those viewing at home who don't have the policy book memorized, this is policy 4400 instructional assignments, elementary arrangements, elementary class size. In order to provide appropriate educational programs for elementary school children, the following guidelines for class sizes are established for enrollment prior to the opening of the school each September. Kindergarten, 22 students. Grade 1, 20 students. Grade 2, 22 students. Grade 3, 22 students. In grades 4 through 6, 26 students. Enrollment will be reviewed during the budget development process. In the event these guideline numbers are exceeded by more than one student per class section, the superintendent shall direct a study to determine, after consideration of all possible factors, what action is most appropriate for each oversized class. This may include adding an additional class section if appropriate and economically feasible. The board recognizes the merit of utilizing teacher aides in overly large classes as one of the alternatives to dividing a class. In addition, whenever the enrollment in a class exceeds the guidelines, the superintendent shall forward information to the Board of Education. I'll turn it over to the board discussion and questions of the cabinet members at the table.
Can we put up that document where we compare
Which document?
class size stuff?
Class size comparison.
Did you share that one with Greg?
No.
4,400.
Not the policy, the document that shows the class size comparisons to regional districts, or to regional comparable districts.
That's the one you just printed.
I have it.
Greg, I just sent it to you, if you can pull it up, but.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Carmen. So Margaret did research on neighboring districts and both their policy and associated information on what they have as their class size policies. So we'll have that ready for you to display in a second.
Wait, Margaret, can you give a little background for people who are new to the district on why we went with lower policies for the last 2 years?
So when we made the initial decision to move to grade banding, the board at that time felt that because it was the first year, that they would allow us to keep the class sizes at what we considered a COVID level, so that there was enough time to adjust, et cetera. Sorry, forgot all about that. I apologize.
So people were used to class sizes before the Princeton plan because of COVID. You were mentioning COVID level?
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
We were a little bit lower, probably in 2021 and 21-22, as we were coming back. If you remember, we had to reduce considerably for space in the classroom. And as we came back in those 2 years, we increased, but we never went to the full policy cap. And as a result, that board said, let's keep it this way for the first year. And then we had the conversation for this year And we're pretty, I mean, the math doesn't always work, so a number may look artificially depressed because mathematically, if you dropped a section, you would go over, way over in some cases. So what we have for you tonight, that's very small. Maybe it's okay if you're at home. So I'll look at mine on the screen. So I was asked to poll my colleagues in Curriculum Council to ask what the neighboring districts do. Several school districts responded to us, and those results are here. You can see by looking at the K through 5 numbers that our numbers, which are at the very bottom of that list, are well within the range span of all of our neighboring districts. In some cases, you see districts that have a range. If you look all the way over on the right in the notes, almost every district explained what that range meant, that they shoot for the lower number, but that the higher number is acceptable. You can see Ossining has firm caps at 2nd and 3rd, and then 4th and 5th. They won't go over that, even though that cap is above what's on the chart. And finally, Bedford, just above us, the practice is lower, but the contract allows them to go higher. So that was the information that was shared with us.
So would you say that our class sizes are in par with our neighboring districts?
I think it's pretty clear by looking at that information that we are right smack in the middle, if not in some cases a little bit lower than 1 or 2 grades.
Margaret, quick question for you. I just want to make sure that, so all of these models that we have are using the BOE policy numbers in our projections, correct?
Yes.
Not what's actually being done.
Right, so when we roll the classes forward, so all of the plans are rolled forward from this year. I divided it so that they would come as close to cap as the board policy as possible. And again, you may look at something and say, well, why is that only 23? Because if we drop one more section, it may go to 28. So I pushed it as far as it could go without going over.
Would any of these plans not work that we have remaining if we kept the class sizes at what they actually are now?
Well, if you look at the first page, which speaks to the plans that you're still considering, you can see that there are some examples where if you lowered the class size, you would then need another classroom space. And in some situations, you would be in trouble.
I think the public should at home kind of know what we're doing. So I don't want them to think the plan that we have now is going to keep low class sizes. So I think we should vet as a board if we were going to stick with policy, or are you entertaining lowering class sizes here on out? Because our budget projections don't actually entertain that. So if we are entertaining that I want to know, and I think the public would want to know that as well.
I just want to call one thing out, and I might be wrong. So K through 2, we're fairly close to these class sizes right now. I think it was the older grades that we tried to bring down a little
You
bit.
did. You
3, 4, 5.
concentrated on 4, 5.
So right now in the K through, if you look at K through 2 and you look over at the charts, you should be looking and saying that what we're doing is class caps, but 3 through 5 is not. We artificially lowered that by adding for the past few years.
Three, we had to split because they were at 23.
Yes.
When we split third grade was at 23. They were at class cap already, that's why we split them.
Yep.
The 4th and 5th were not.
Mhm.
I think one of my questions was to ask, in some of this modeling, we've seen need to split. It's helpful for us to understand how much room we have. You know, when the
So
other,
I think you can see, for argument's sake, where do you want to start? If you look at Plan A, which is the plan that we're in now, rolled forward for next year, you see the actual class sizes. So you look like you might possibly have an issue with grades 2 and 3 because the average is 21. You see where I'm looking?
How many,
Yeah.
and there, how many sections?
They have, you have to look at the other chart. How many readings is that?
19, you mean the next one, yeah?
We have 15 seconds.
I think it's 7.
Oh, what are we doing? Day one or?
Oh, the number
We're
is.
we're in BB right now.
Number is-
15 sections total.
15 sections total.
You're what in each grade?
7 and 2 and 3 and 8 in third grade.
That's the one we split.
Well, no, because that is now 4th grade.
Yeah, but we split it this year. Well, here it's next year.
So technically, all of our numbers would increase across the actual class size. If we look at any of these models.
No, this is
No, this
next
is- no,
year's
this is
class.
next year.
Next class.
This is
Okay.
next year. Yeah. I'm just wondering when we have to split. So if we look at let's just, in Plan G,
And G.
FGL has an open classroom. We have to look at the other chart. When would we need to split a grade then? How many students in each grade accept?
So if we're looking at G, FGL is 3.5. If you look at the actual class size for next year, 3rd grade would have 21 average, and 4th and 5th would have 23. And then in the next column, it's telling you that the board cap is 22 for grade 3 and 26 for grades 4 and 5.
So we would be under those caps.
Yes,
Is what you're saying.
yes,
Oh, okay.
And that's your wiggle room there.
yes.
Yeah, times whatever the section is.
Right, so you can take
Now-
7
Right.
kids and then you have.
Times that number.
Yes,
7 kids per grade.
roughly,
times the
because it's the
difference.
number of sections in the grade. Would have to then push you.
The number of classes in the grade.
Right.
Yes.
Because
No.
it changes on the.
You'd
other
be
one.
taking 7 more kids for that grade and distribute them across the
Right.
sections.
And technically you'd be
Still with
half.
it.
Sorry, just for the grade.
And you need another 7 to go.
To push it over.
You did, right. That's a lot.
Or 14.
So yeah,
there's
you
room.
have, I guess my question is, when do you ever see 14 kids move into a grade here
No.
in one given year,
It's a variable that
right?
you could always say it can
Could always
increase,
happen.
it always, like.
Yeah.
You can look at enrollment trends.
But that also goes back to what you read already, like about adding an aid if it does go over.
Right.
So that is an option, and you know, when you hit that, right?
So you
And-
want to weigh,
and we've
if
done
splitting
that
the
in
classes or economic.
So in my time as a parent, I've seen us split in, when we were in school once. It was actually before either of you were here. Okay, so it was a while ago.
Right.
I actually think it's the current seniors. So they're seniors now, they were at the BV in either 4th or 5th grade. And they only had 3 sections, I believe, and there was 26. They were at 26 and they had 27.
Mhm.
And they had to make a decision, and I believe it was in October that the decision was made to split them. So it was into the year, but there was a little bit at the time, when you got to October, there was a lot of conversation around, do you split them in October? Because now you're mixing up,
Correct.
you're introducing a new teacher to the mix, you're introducing, all the kids had to switch around late in the year, and I think that's where it comes in. At that, when you get to that point, what do you do? Because now you're disrupting.
The advantage with the grade banding model in every place you go is that you now have a lot of sections. So as we just said, it takes a lot of children in one grade to move in and push you to that limit. In this example that you're giving, and certainly in Furnace Woods, it was mostly 2 sections. You could be tipped very easily,
Yes.
but having all of the grade under one house allows you a lot more play because you can keep going as the kids come in. I mean, eventually, sure, if you had an influx, you would have something that you just need to discuss. But you have more play because you have more places to put them. Yeah.
And just to remind the board and the public, because I don't want to have a misconception of what we did back in July when we added the 3. We were talking about COVID, the influence. We were talking about social emotional needs. We were talking about all of those things and decided we would do one more year with the smallest class size to allow these kids to catch up. It had nothing to do with,
Plans.
except for grade 3, that we would have fallen under the policy.
I guess,
No, go ahead.
no, I have a question. I guess if there's a huge influx, let's say, 2 developments that are scheduled to have 400 full population increase in this district. How do these plans fare with that kind of influx? They're not all gonna be children, obviously, but let's just say we have a situation like that. How will these plans work for our
I
district?
think the studies show 13 kids, but even on the worst
Yeah, but
end,
it's 13 kids for 335. That's not right.
It's possible.
it's only 1 and 2 bedroom. Was it just one bedroom?
No, there's 2 developments. There's Village Square, that's gonna have 51 2-bedroom apartments. And then there's AMS, which is gonna have 148 units, and there's 50 0 to 1 bedrooms, 50 plus 2 bedrooms, and 50 plus 3 bedrooms.
It's a 3-bedroom, not actually 3 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms.
No closet.
Says it in there.
They're like, but that's, yeah.
Okay, but that many apartments is not gonna just give us 13 children.
So I think what we would have to do to provide a solid answer is to come to an agreement with what this board would say those developments could bring us. And then if we come to that agreement, if it's not gonna be a study, we'd have to agree as a board so that we could provide you the most accurate data.
I wanna just throw one thing in, you know, Round Top, we have like 5 students there, and there's probably hundreds of people that live in there as well. I'm just making it up, I don't know for sure
The
what the
Amberlin,
number is.
the Amberlins and Dove Court area as well. They're all apartments. There's many 2 bedrooms. I don't think we have that many children. This is stuff we have to look at. I don't think we should assume that because so I don't know if you read the report that explained this scientifically, how they come up with based on census data, where they came up with the 13 and the 5 students, or the 9 and the 5 students, was based on the mathematical equation that gets you there. Of course, there could always fluctuate. It could always fluctuate. So, I mean, it's a fair thing to ask, but I think we can't make any assumptions. We have to go by what we know.
Here would be the parameters we would have to be given in order to provide you the details within that framework. What we agree upon is the increase of enrollment and then what grades those students would fall into. And then we'd have to start presenting if we want to go worst case scenarios, if we go above and beyond the maximum capacity. Even when we're 2-3 years in here, if this occurs, you have some options. Are we looking at capital improvements through bonds and the like? Are we looking at, for temporary measures, modulars, which I know may not be most ideal, but it is an option to address an immediate situation that could arise. And I've been in a district or 2 that's had the modulars, and they're often very nice spaces with air conditioning and very nice opportunity. It's not ideal, but that is an option if we get to a point where we're finding ourselves in the need to find emergency space.
When is the completion date?
We don't know yet. I'm just asking the question because I feel like putting down 13 kids for well over 200 apartments is not accurate.
No, I'm just asking, like, is this?
They're not
talking
approved,
2
they're not
years?
really
We
approved.
don't even know.
Not 5 years?
They're not approved, and then there's also the whole financing piece. Do they make sense to build? Can someone afford to build them in the market?
Would it help the board as it is a question that will need to be answered once we narrow down the plans, or even when we narrow down a plan? That is something that we would have to engage in a feasibility study to ensure that we are prepared for any possible impact.
So the plan, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we
No, I
have.
was just gonna say, we should know that because we're growing, right? And if we continue to grow and we say, hey, we're gonna go with, let's just say, Plan B, and we decide to do that, and all of a sudden we get an influx of children and we can't fit them, then we've done all of this and we haven't prepared for the future. And I think we need to be we just need to pay attention to that. So we make sure that we're not making a decision and then something, we get an influx of kids and then we can't place them anywhere because we don't have the room. So I think we need to look at that as we go through, all these iterations of what we have in total here.
I have 2 questions. I think you ladies were around when the development was it Round Top?
Yeah.
Was there some feasibility study for that?
Wasn't here.
I was here. And my second question is, I read the report about the 13 projected kids,
Nice.
but enrollment in New York State in public schools is projected to decrease.
100, yeah. across the
So
board.
across the board. I think it was by 14.5% in public school enrollment in New York was projected to decrease. So that might be where you're getting the 9 and the 13. And if you look at birth rates, they're down as well. So when we're really, I mean, I know that's definitely a consideration and we need that. But I think we also, when we were switching to the Princeton plan, we were also looking at decreases. So if you look at our enrollment over the last 10 years, we have decreased. And that's where the savings was supposed to come in when we consolidated. So I didn't, when we looked at the recent enrollment numbers, I didn't see big jumps.
They're stable.
They're
Seems to be
stable.
losing and gaining.
They're stable but it's like with a 4, it's nothing. I think you really have to look at New York State data for that and what other school districts are prepping for.
What I
So-
can suggest to you,
Sure.
since you seem to like this chart, is I can add a column, number one, that shows you the sections, because we had to go back to the other document to see that. And then I can also add a column that tells you how many open seats you have before you're in trouble in each grade.
Yes.
And one thing we
Yeah,
can do
'cause
long
that's
term,
true.
we did reach back out to Western Suffolk BOCES, who conducted the 10-year enrollment study, projection study in 2022, 2023. We did reach back out to them and put them on standby for assistance to reconvene that study. They do need some lead time. We could make sure that we re-enlist their services if that's the will of the board as well.
I just want to also point out that unfortunately, we get an influx of children every, I don't think.
But again, we could
So-
have temporary measures to support.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, we'd likely have to do a capital project anyhow.
because even in what were the current plan, we only have 2 full classrooms open at BV and Furnace.
And what I've seen be successful is you wouldn't necessarily make those modulars, excuse me, the classroom of
All day.
a teacher all day. It would probably be a special, maybe art, one of those classes that might, yeah.
I have to tell you, they're very nice. I worked in a district where I didn't even know I was in one until they told me, and they've been there forever. They did not get rid of them, so.
Not that that's ideal for us,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
as a preparedness.
It looks like part of the building.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna say the old fashioned way back when,
Right.
that we all have horrible memories of, they were like trailers brought in.
Right.
What you're getting now are modular units,
Right.
and they're very different, and they put them on a foundation. And go back to Pelham, as an example, because it was done when we were there, and it was only this last year, 10 years later, that building was torn down and a new one was built and the modulars went away.
Huh.
So there were 10 years and they still looked as good as they did in year one. And actually, when all the criticism about them, the teachers fought to be in them. Because they were air conditioned and they had all the luxury of a new school and, in an old building where there was no air conditioning.
Yeah.
That became the primary space to use, so
Mhm.
they shouldn't be viewed as junk.
Yeah.
They're not.
Right.
Do we know what the cost is for something?
I did go through that with Anthony just recently. And Enrique, and by the time you would buy it, put it on the lot and collect the plumbing and all, about $100,000 for a 2-unit.
Two
It's a
classrooms,
2-classroom unit, because they're big enough to get 2 rooms out of it.
and you purchase it. That's the purchase.
Yes, it doesn't pay to lease them because you can sell them they're good to sell. That's what happened in Pelham. They did sell it to somebody else later on when they were removed. They still sit on the wheels and you still put a foundation.
Yeah.
So when you take the foundation away, they put the wheels back on and cart it away.
Just looking to. Class caps, 4, 5, and 6, those numbers are on the higher end of some of the other ones. Would we consider keeping it or? Where are you looking? For 4, 5, and 6, we're at 26 on this chart.
So the comparable.
Oh,
No, 4, 5, and 6. 6 isn't on here, but it's at 26. Looking at like regional. Those, some of them are around 26 as a max. But a lot of them are a little bit lower. Would we want to stay at 26, or would we want to look to reduce by maybe a student or two?
Most of them look like they're at 26. There's outliers that I would say are lower,
The
would be
first-
Byram Hills and.
The first,
Ardsley.
like fourth grade, the first 4 schools are all lower. They are smaller school districts, yes. I'm not saying I feel one way or another, I just was asking like for a pulse of the room, like how everyone else felt.
I think for me to look at revising that policy, I would need to be educated a little bit more on what does each body in the classroom do to instruction. Because there's like studies out there, I think at one point when we were talking about it, then we started reading them, and they were like, you have to drop down to like.
Yeah.
15, it's
So-
15.
So the one that, yeah,
And
the
we
one-
read it-
my favorite, so this is
appreciate that
my
the more
topic.
children-
The Tennessee study, which is held up high, and even though it was done in the 80s, it's still the one that everybody refers to.
Yeah.
You talked about like 15 and lower, then it makes a difference, and then you're looking at 32, 32 and over, you have a big problem. So in that in between, this is just,
Right, like that's one.
How are you comfortable? my recommendation would be to leave everything alone. You're right smack where it needs to be. That's my point.
In thinking about that class size policy and knowing that we've kept them low artificially and haven't done the cap, have we received better results from that? I mean, are our test scores improved because of it? When I look at revising policy and the money it would take to do that, would that money be better spent in reading support, math specialists to get test grades up? Because if I look, if we start with the COVID years and how low it's been, what have we received in results from keeping it that low? I would argue that those supports need to be put elsewhere.
But I would argue making them higher at 26, since they have been low, also makes it difficult for those kids who have already had a lot happening.
Wait, but we're not. If I read this right, next year you would still be trending where we've been.
Well, we're well under cap.
So it's 20.
It gives you the ability to go up. But to me, this column's really helpful. Next year, you'd be seeing the same size classes that we are today.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to clarify because I'm a visual person. So are we saying that the class, I don't know, I feel like I'm missing something
Yeah,
just because I'm not seeing it.
yep,
And I
so
want to
this
see it. No,
column,
I see it, but I'm not seeing it.
Margaret, I guess when you guys ran your numbers, right, for these projections, is it based on the board policy numbers?
Yes, so
It
when
is.
when I took Benita's aggregate of saying there'll be 140 kids in next year's 4th grade. When I did the division to find sections, I pushed it as far as I could close to cap. And like I said, you'll see, like, you may look at this and say, well, why is it only 23? It's only 23 because if we drop one, we go to 28, we can't have that.
Okay.
I think it'll be helpful in the next version of this. I can show you these numbers will still be there. I'll break it by grade, line by line, and then I'll show you how many open seats you have. Should we suddenly have an influx
it
of
is what it is next year,
What it would actually be.
next year.
Because I read the actual is what we actually have now, right?
That
Right,
is
but
correct.
they're
It's next year's kids though.
Kids,
Yes.
that's right.
That's what it is. That is what it will actually look like based on next year's last grade.
You know, just an observation, I just asked Benita to make sure I was right, and it is
Today's.
been verified. When you think of new students entering, and if you think of your own lives, most people, having been in that situation as a child, you don't want to move children in high school. So most parents do not move students unless you have to. So the enrollment numbers that you normally see that increase are at the elementary level as opposed to the secondary level. So keeping that in mind, but I'm not saying
This
that,
was different here. Didn't we?
no, we just did it for this year too. Go ahead, Vinnie, do you want to say what you saw?
No, we actually see more students coming in the elementary and early middle school, not at.
Okay.
Most,
I thought that.
Last year, we got 10 new students.
in ninth grade.
one thing to
Ninth
consider
grade.
is mid-year moves, most school districts have policies that allow you to finish your,
Right,
if your
right.
family moves out of the town, they allow them to finish their year out in the district that they moved from.
I think it would also be helpful to the public for them to see our enrollment for the last 10 years. So they can actually follow what our enrollment has been and not have to look through board docs.
Well, we have that, we do, yes, we do have it here for the last 3 years. I believe, right? It's in one of the documents.
In the restructuring
Right.
document. The restructuring.
Enrollment data is on page 18 of the 2023-2024 K through 5 school models. The reason why we use that 3-year trend data was because that 2020, the 10-year enrollment projection report that Western Suffolk BOCES put together, we were already seeing differences in their projections and our actuals. So we wanted to make sure we provided the best known data that we had as we looked at enrollment trends. And we determined that would be not the report, but that would be the 3-year enrollment trend data. And again, that's on page 18 of the 2023-2024 K through 5 school models.
Going on.
Right, so that was the point that I was trying to make.
Probably.
Down 3. No, we're down 3. We're down.
Yeah,
two
we're-
right now.
Down.
From last year.
From last year.
Yeah.
Well, we were up from 21 and
Right.
22 going in.
And that was my
But
question.
that's,
And
you
that's-
also added 35 pre-K students. So if you back out that 35 from the top, then you're down.
Yeah, I thought this is helpful.
Pre-K.
Do you know what's really helpful in that old study that? Forget the study. When I did enrollment and I did it from other districts, all surrounding that spreadsheet that I shared, it, all enrollment.
Right.
In around us is either stable or declining. There are, I think, 2 districts that have slightly increased, and I think Peekskill would be one of them. So, I mean, if people look around and you're looking at projections for the last 10 years, and you're looking at what New York state has come out with, and what the US Census has come out with, we were looking at decreases in enrollment. I'm not like, yes, could we have 13 new kids move in 2nd grade? Yes, we can, but we could also have a meteorite hit us too. I'm just saying, the likelihood of that happening is not gonna.
Yeah, usually there's like a net where it's back and forth, but right now, looking at just the Octobers, right? 'Cause we don't have June of 24 yet, just the Octobers, we are slightly up, even if you take out the 36 kids from, yeah. If you take away 36 from that last number, still above the October.
There's 34 there.
They wash each other.
There's 34 there too.
Yeah, you have to take it out of both.
Yeah.
Compare
Yeah, but even
What
if you
she's
take it
saying,
out of
if you
there,
take out pre-K from October 22, it's 2191. If you take pre-K out of 23-24, it's 2207.
which is still slight, it's not a big increase from 21, 22, but it is.
Stable. It's 6 kids.
But I think we need to also remember, we haven't had any new developments here in forever, right? So that's also the reason why we stabilized. Peak still has some of those increases in their enrollment, so I just think we need to keep an eye on that as well.
You know, I think that's an issue in all of these. In all of them.
Even
Yeah, the
the
only
plan
place
that we're
that
in.
has room is Plan B, Woods. That's the only place where there's significant space.
Plan B in 3-5 has 3 rooms too. It's more than either.
Beneath it, just for business purposes of the data, 13 and 14th grade year, that's
Thank you.
students who are on a 5th year cohort graduation, and then students who have not aged out, who might have the ability to stay in until 21.
Which one?
13 and 14.
Those are all the
So,
So they actually stay till they're 22.
Anybody that's alternately assessed for B, actually, 3-5.
They all graduate.
I'm sorry.
We won't graduate, maybe in 22, 23 or 13.
No, not necessarily, no.
It just dropped to nothing now.
No, preschool, no. Can I ask a question? I'm looking at this, I think I called this out in one of our communal 20 questions last night. If you look at the one with the pink highlights where they're eliminated, if you look at Plan B, FGL 35. Right? The numbers are right in column total capacity and then total enrollment, but then in remaining full, in Plan B, there's 3 open classes at Frank G. Lindsay, but in Plan G, there's only 1. That was one of the questions I
Oh,
asked last night. to
I'm wondering
reconfirm.
if it's the one big, too small.
I think it's, no, it can't be the tech rooms, never mind. Margaret has the floor.
That's different.
So just,
No, I can find out for you.
I think that's important for us to.
Yes.
It was one of the questions I asked, to just have.
FGL,
I guess for confidence in the data of the public, the team did take a look at the floor plans and assigned hypothetical rooms to each of those to see if this plan, each of these plans were put in place with the numbers that we have and the number of classrooms needed, where could these rooms go to make a configuration fit? So that was accomplished by the team.
And we also want to, I just want to make sure that the public understands that every single classroom, the extra skills classrooms for each grade level are in here, right, Lisa?
I'm sorry.
The skills classes we need are in here.
Yeah.
The ABC class here.
And the 12-1-2s are in.
And then all of our projected, this is our special education question.
So keeping everything that we had in mind, our next focus question deals with special education because we transitioned nicely into that. What are the preferences of the board for special education programs as we consider these models?
For me, it's to make sure that we're maintaining all that we currently have. Is what we need. So whatever we have right now, we want to make sure that it is seen in the new plans. Which means like the ABC, the 12-1-2, our ICT classrooms, our skills classrooms. Our own children are taken care of, but we're taking into consideration our tuition students, that all of that is maintained.
The only thing that I will say is if we look at G, because we can do K-1-2, ABC can be K-1-2. Those 2 classes will be totally full. Right now, they're full. We would have to add another section we have room for that would be at least 4 of our students in there, and we could tuition the other 4 out. That's 4 that we know of, because remember, we think we know all of our kids, and then somebody pops up.
Do we have room for that here?
Is this
In
at
G, just to
G,
confirm.
in G?
But we don't
No,
know
it's not.
because B and G have different answers.
Right, I think what I would tell,
So you don't know. until-
That's not FGL.
That's only a GL that doesn't.
so what I would tell you is the answer would be if we look at those rooms and we walk through. Margaret and I had done a walkthrough in that way back corner that Armin was talking of. Armin, I said his name, Armand. So he had said that will make a nice space. If you knock those walls down, some of them are temporary, most of them are temporary. There's like an old locker room back there that can actually, that would make a nice size room. Or you could station it, cut it up into reading rooms, E&L rooms, a skills room. So there would be room. But again, I don't want to guarantee that I need someone, I'm not an architect and I can build, but you know, I can knock walls down, but.
we fell short of actually going the route until we actually dealt with facilities. To answer the question about whether our staff can do some of that work or it has to be farmed out. Either way, even if there's a cost to it, it's probably not major. And it appears to be something that could be done between now and September. If you made the decision in December, these are rooms that are like custodial, storage room. And things could be moved from there and it could be worked on now.
I know that we all love that we are always doing meetings and we've added meetings, but I think we should probably walk, a couple of us should walk
Yeah.
Through?
Yeah.
Furnace Woods,
Yeah.
Yes.
we can arrange.
We also found another bathroom back there.
Really?
So if you go through the hallway and around a corner and you duck in another hallway and there's a door, to the right is a beautiful bathroom. I'm assuming it went with the gym because of where it's located, but there is a full facility back there.
My suggestion, if we walk through it, is we arrange to have Armand with us.
Mhm.
He has great insight and sees things that we don't see.
Way back here.
Another preference that like I would want, and I'm sure a lot would, is to make sure that our special ed students are with their age or grade cohort.
Mhm.
So that they're not in a separate location from their peers.
Yep.
So that we keep them in the same building.
Building.
Same building, yes, same building, so that we're not putting, I said, I preference would be for special ed students to be with their age or grade cohort.
Exactly.
In the same building and not separated.
And remember
Yeah.
though, we also have to be,
ABC isn't.
the
Not right
ABC,
now. Two is-
they're not together, you're right. But you also have to group like students, so teachers have the ability to work collaborative.
So,
And I think that's a big piece of it. That's why we did what we did this year, because there was no other peers for them. So we have to think about that as well, but if you have more than one, they would have two, possibly three in that building and two in the other building.
how does
So,
that,
can you just explain for me, because what Amelia just said,
Mm-hmm.
is that not what we have right now in Plan A? In Plan A, no, we've moved all ABCs into two buildings. So that way they're with like kids, so they have ways to integrate in mainstream and then eventually get them into another mainstream.
And you're saying, Amelia, you would want them to be in
I didn't get that.
their building?
With their peers.
So they're peers. So you do two K2s at a minimum and two 3-5s.
Okay, this gives us that.
Mhm.
Okay, right now, we are not having that.
But that was a decision.
Based on transition.
But it was, by the,
Just accept that.
I mean, and it was decided by the special ed department that
Right.
was best for kids. Like, I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't like a discussion like that they wouldn't be with age appropriate kids.
Correct.
This was what you felt, your team felt was best for kids.
Best for kids, right?
Yes. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
so in, Plan E, by putting fifth in the middle school, there's a special education,
ABC.
yes.
There is, so what we'd have to do, because the age variances, you can't have more than 36 months without a variance.
Okay.
So what we'd have to do is split it and make it a 5-6 and a 7-8. So
Oh,
you'd
okay.
have two bands.
Okay.
I mean, that would be an increase of a teacher and
What
two
about,
TAs.
what, is there a 12-1-1?
There are two at the middle school, a 6th grade and a 7-8.
No, I mean right now with fifth graders that are combined with the
Yes.
fourth.
Yep,
So
yep.
what happens to them? You just do the same thing?
They would go up and we do a 5-6.
Okay.
Because we have a 6th grade only right now,
Okay.
because 6 is still common branch.
Mhm.
So you can just have an elementary teacher teach them all day. 7-8 looks a little different,
Right.
because you have to have all the certifications. So we would have a 5-6 and a 7-8.
Okay.
Can I ask you what Yorktown does, since they have a Princeton plan, how they group special ed?
I can't tell you off the top of my head. I know when I talked to districts before that had classrooms like ours, they just stationed them in one building. It wasn't based on size, the age, anything like that.
Okay.
I will also say this is right now, having the kids, the way we have it, it's 2 grade levels. So when you think about 3 going to 4, and the content is so much different. So when we talk about those grades, we really have to talk about, can a special ed teacher teach 3, 4, and 5 state assessed students? That's a hard call. I used to do it myself, but I did 6, 7, and 8. It's difficult because you're teaching an elementary and 2 middle schools. And if you look at the 3rd grade curriculum compared to the 4, 5 curriculum, it's a difficult thing for our teachers to know that inside and out and backwards and forward, especially since kids are rotating through the grades. We just want to be cautious of that. But I think with the makeup of doing a K2, we can probably be pretty flexible and come up with some creative ways for 3, 4, and 5.
That's just for the ABC and
It's just for the 12 and 2s.
12 and 2. How many kids is that right now?
It's 9 and 4, 5 that'll go up. And then there's a bunch, I think there's 8 going from 3rd to 4th.
They stay with that teacher for,
They usually stay with that teacher. It's
So-
right now on a 2-year.
I think the important thing to do is there any plan A, B, E, G that does not meet what the board wants from a special education perspective.
We just wanna make sure we're not losing,
My,
right?
because the only thing I would say is, let's say we went with a plan B, and we have a set of twins. And the homeschool is BB, but we don't have a special ed program there at
Well, we
that
talked
age.
about, we would have them in both schools, so we duplicate the programs.
You would duplicate, so like right now, for some ICT, you have like a skills and you have a not, but let's say. So we have an ICT in both buildings, are you gonna have a skills and non-skills in both buildings?
You can, it would look different on an IEP, so it would say direct, teacher, and then you'd have a TA doing the indirect. So you'd have keep a TA in the room with those kids in full day. The teacher in another TA or ATA would pull out into the skills section.
I'm just wondering, let's say we just did skills and a non-skills, skills, I'm just gonna make up BV, non-skills, Woods. My homeschool is here, but my twin needs the skills, so now they're
They were all
there.
right. So we had it last year, we never presented to the public because we didn't vote on it, that every single thing, every single child was in their homeschool except for the ABC and the 12-1-2. Because we were
You
going
can't
to
put them in the same, you would overpopulate special ed in one
in
building.
K2. So in K2, K2, skilled ICT was replicated so that every child that we had two in each room, one ICT, one regular ICT, one skilled ICT in each of the grade level. A1, 2.
What
And
would
then
be
you
the,
always were going to your homeschool.
so then what would be that would be a double cost. though.
It wasn't, no, we had to figure it out where it wasn't.
I figured out that it could be a double cost, but I figured out how we can do it. We might have to hire an extra TA, but it's not the double cost of all the teachers.
Okay.
But you'd have to take the ABC and have in one side and the 12s on the other side, because if you put them all in one building, you're
Yeah,
definitely gonna be
yeah.
flagged
Yeah,
because
they
of the
were-
number of
They were
students.
traveling.
Yeah.
They potentially could be traveling.
Mhm.
They were the group that would be, but it's a smaller group, but that was where we landed last year, that's where I don't know if we ever, I don't think we ever.
We never
presented
got,
that
we
publicly.
never.
I don't think we did.
As-
So right now, they are moving the way we are. Am I clear on that?
No,
They are moving the way.
Now they're not.
Sure.
So now they're not.
B, our ABC and 12-1-2 students would need to go
One or
possibly
the other.
to not their home K-2 school.
Okay.
So if the program for my child entering K is the ABC program, and it was in Furnace Woods, and where I live over in Montrose Buchanan, I would have to understand that my child has to go to Furnace Woods to get the service that they need.
But also in the current plan, we do have a situation where
You still have to do.
you still have to do that.
For ABCs, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So hearing
That's
the
what I'm
board-
saying.
hearing- Right, hearing the board's priorities, the sense of the board, not to be leading, but you asked if there's any
Yeah.
plans that do not align with that priority, and there are two plans that are doing, and that's the current model, and we would say B.
But our current model that was done by choice.
That was
So-
done by student, by what we needed for students.
But we can incorporate that if we chose to change.
If we
it.
do K2s and we say this is where the ABC kids will be, this is where the 12-on-2 kids, we can definitely lay that out.
So there was if it's okay with the board, I suggest we move on to the next question, because we naturally led in with the question about Blue Mountain Middle School. Yes. So does the board want to consider moving the 5th grade as a priority to Blue Mountain Middle School? In this configuration, a house system would require additional full-time administrative support. We really keep the 5th grade separate from within the school setting from the other grades, and that would also have a budgetary impact.
So is it I mean, I don't know if it's a priority as much as a need based on maintaining all grade level kids in the same school. So I don't think I feel like we haven't looked at it as we want to move 5 to middle school, but if moving 5 to middle school allows all our other students to be with their peers from K to 4, then I think that's something that we should discuss.
So when you say that, just to clarify, if the movement of the 5th grade out of the current building into the middle school to allow a K through 4 school?
No, no, but allows like all the other schools. Allows us to get rid of one transition in order to keep all the other K-4 with their peers. So nobody you have a K1, 2 building and a 3-4 building or something like that. So that minimizing transitions and keeping kids within great boundaries.
Yeah, well, that's what
It
plan,
really-
that's what Plan E, so Plan E was, the reason Plan E came to fruition, because Plan G didn't exist until a couple weeks ago. Plan E came to fruition with the goal in mind of keeping all of our children together by their grade level from kindergarten through kindergarten through 12th grade, essentially.
With the preface, with the idea that it would be a meaningful transition. The idea would not be to just mix in 5th grade amongst 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Right.
On a floor. It would be Armand came up with the idea of a house of a 5, 6, and a 7, 8, which he presented at facilities, which had a lot of great benefits to it. And that they could be isolated. So yes, they would share and when I say share, they would use the same cafeteria, they would use the same gym, but it would not be like high school where they are mixed. They
And
would
that-
share this space.
And I think it's also,
Together.
well, I think it's also important to say that the only reason we were doing this is because we didn't think we could fit K2, 3, 5, right? So,
So it's not a priority.
No,
It's a,
exactly.
if this, then.
Yes.
It's also something that, in my opinion, requires shared decision-making, right? And if it were to be the direction that we go in, we would need to know that the community and the parents and the staff and that everybody is part of the process. That's a big shift.
Yeah. I share some similar concerns just moving 5th up because you start thinking about what are those shared spaces going to look like when we talk about buses. We talk about like restroom facilities. We would have to be mindful if this were the route that we were to go, we would have to be mindful of making sure that we are looking at all the different scenarios, and the shared decision-making team would be a great one to do that with, to make sure that we are monitoring all those situations and having a plan in place for all of that.
I mean, I can like off the top of my head think of so many risks and so many, and then I can also see like, because I think, I don't like to get personal, but once you've gone through it and once you've been a parent, like, I remember before my child ever got to middle school, I was like, oh my God, right? You have a different understanding. So it's not something that everybody can feel until you've done it. There's so many risks, there's so many concerns. But I do see that there could be so many potential benefits.
Well, yeah, I mean, benefits could be in terms of teaching,
Like I think if
6th
our
grade
4th and 5th
teachers.
graders are together right now, they would be moving together. And they'll be the same kids who are used to being together. They'd just be in a different location.
Yeah, we
But
would-
then you have to factor in the bus.
So I was gonna say, the bus,
You
and we
know.
could talk about potentially having monitors on a bus if we needed to, same situation like we had with our little ones for a little bit of time, or,
we can also, we can have monitors, but I think we could also look at, because we have so many buses. Can we do a 5, 6 and a 7, 8 bus? Is that something that the community would want to see?
But what a pain in the butt for families.
Well, you listen, I would have been in that situation. It wouldn't have bothered me if it kept my 5th grader. If it was possible to do it, kept my 5th grader and bus with.
I don't know, Erica. One of the biggest nightmares as a parent is having multiple buses.
Well, my middle school is just, my kid just, they're middle school. They just go to the bus.
Not but not in 5th grade.
Yes, they do.
I don't know. I live on a main
Yes,
road.
they do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Crossover.
not all of us.
Like a latch.
My kid, I don't know if they're gonna walk.
Wait until you have a kid in college.
I'm gonna be there.
No, but it's crazy. You have to admit, it's crazy how it changes from 5th and 6th grades. Like my 8th grader now, I'm like, see ya. And he walks out the door and he crosses over Kingsbury and I pray that he got to school, right?
Or just, I mean,
It's
have
just
fears
different.
of your first child, like,
Yes.
the first child is always a little
But
different
5th
than.
is still young.
Yeah,
They're still
they're
young.
still babies.
I mean,
They're
it
babies.
totally depends on the child, it depends on where you live.
It's also
it depends
dark
on
out
how
some
you
mornings, right?
feel, I mean, there's a lot of different
Yeah.
variables, but it could be a shared decision.
And it
Yeah.
also, I think this
Make it a
is,
shared
so
decision.
here's the thing, this, if we don't fit in a G plan. And we have to look at an E plan.
But wait, let's not even say that.
let's just
We
say,
fit in a G plan.
right, if, okay, so we're saying we fit in the G plan. We fit in the G plan, is E a priority for the
No,
board?
not for me.
Stephanie has.
I just need some clarification because it's like I'm in a different universe. Princeton Plan conversation came about because Indian Point closed and it was a cost savings measure. Now we're talking about a plan that's gonna cost taxpayers additional money. And we still know that Indian Point, that problem is still here. That did not go away. We still,
Stephanie.
I'm confused about what you're saying. Our goal, we started this conversation around cost saving measures. We realized, kind of no matter what you do when you're educating children, you're gonna be a variable, there's very little variable, right? We learned that, no, but hold on, let me finish.
okay, go ahead.
We have to update and modernize our buildings. They are our biggest asset, right? The plan, which we have in our BCS, is to take already without this, take this out the window. The plan already is to take our library and move it down to centralized locations that's actually utilized by the student. That takes, that's without this. Correct? Yeah. That's a 2 million-ish expense currently? Okay. To do this, to move our 5th grade, if that was a priority of the community, because we're talking about what's best education for children, and what the opportunities are, what is the expense to build out the 5 classrooms that are currently the library? And if we didn't build those out because we're moving it anyway, what would be done with that space? When you talk about an expense to the community, I don't follow, because we're doing the work. It's in the bond, it's proposed. So what would we be doing and how much money is it to build out those 5 classrooms? $500,000. It's $500,000. And what would we do, but what would we do with that space if we weren't? What would we do with that?
The bond shows us building them out as 5 basic classrooms.
So that's in the bond.
That's in the review of what we would propose as part.
So what's the difference of the cost?
You're still building out the houses. So the way I heard it in facilities, there was 2 different models. This is what you were gonna do with the bond and without moving anything. And if you move, this was gonna be the cost. And it was a different cost.
So it's not 2.5.
So
$1 million.
it was definitely a cost.
It's in addition to that money that
What would have to be done is where special ed, where PPSs would have to go.
Mhm.
So that would have to be relocated and fitted out. And they would have, I mean, Armin have to look at it because he never put a dollar on it. And he wasn't saying it was a no cost. But the 5 classrooms that we were gaining.
Yeah, it was not no cost.
It was not a no.
So I look back to all this
So
training.
none of us have this, so you're
Okay.
saying that none of us have the information that you have, which is, right?
We don't have it.
But he definitely said it would cost money. So when I'm looking at your plans, and even when I'm looking at class size, I go back to Maurice Sykes and his presentation on it really doesn't matter what you're in. It's matter what you do with what you're in and what you do with what you have and what you give these kids.
So are we saying that no matter what we do with elementary school, you wanna scrap the library move?
No, I'm not, but there is a cost.
You have to be careful what you're saying. 'cause
Yeah, okay,
what you're
there
saying
is an additional cost to move 5th grade to the middle school that is outside of anything that you're doing there now.
We don't know what that number is, right?
No, and it's not, it's definitely not $100,000, it's more than that.
Can I just, so we don't belabor this anymore, is anybody on the board wanting to move 5th grade next year?
If G fits, I think we all just said that it's not a priority to do it. I mean, I thought it was only if.
It was only if G didn't work.
Here's what I have.
Like, it sounds
Captured.
smarter to bring in a portable, whatever you call it, instead
To
of
keep the children.
that.
I captured moving the 5th grade to Blue Mountain Middle School is not a priority to the board and would only come to play if we don't fit in Plan G, but if we do fit in Plan G. Plan E, which had the component of moving to Blue Mountain Middle School, is not a priority or would not be desirable.
Right.
I just wanna say one thing. I don't think anyone in this committee wants to do this again. What we're doing right now, this exercise. We wanna do it, we wanna be done with it.
I agree.
Okay, so the reason that this came to fruition was because of G did not exist in the first place. If we have any concern that G is not gonna fit in a long-term plan, then E has to be vetted a little more. Do you follow me? I follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, if we think that Furnace, if we're ever gonna grow out of any of these buildings, and we could grow into Furnace, grow into Blue Mountain, then we should look at it
What,
now.
any of the work that we're doing in the potential bond help with space at the elementary school?
We,
Like,
didn't
for
itemize,
is there anything that changes?
So
the-
I didn't itemize anything. We were waiting until this vote. There's money
Decide.
allotted for it, for the
Generally.
elementary schools.
Yeah.
But we haven't decided what we're doing with that money yet until we know what plan we're
Okay.
going with.
That's brilliant.
Which was, which was gonna be if we are not prioritizing grade 5 to Blue Mountain. And if G, let's say potentially we might have some concerns. The amount of money that I think I'm hearing that it would cost to do stuff in E to get 5th grade would be a lot of money, but what
We didn't
you
G.
heard with G, if we were to do a modular. Would be, you said 100K for 2 classrooms. So we could still do G.
Yeah.
If we could get the okay from Armand that we could put modulars or one modular or modulars, whatever it is. Or the potential to expand, however, once we talk to Armand, would be a cheaper alternative than to put in Blue Mountain and would satisfy
So
what we're
building
prioritizing.
new square footage is not cheap. He said,
No.
building new square footage is
Well,
800,
But at least the
So-
modular,
not a modular. So if you're saying building onto Furnace Woods, not a modular.
oh yeah, no, we
expanding,
talked about the
is
expansion was
800
800
dollars
square foot, yeah,
So like, that is not
Yeah.
ideal,
right now it's.
unless you really, really need
Yes.
to do that and it supports a vision of the district. Like, which it could, I'm not saying it doesn't, but right now I don't think it does. So, I mean, we didn't put dollars to moving 5th to Blue Mountain at all. We just put dollars to the library and refitting out those as 5 basic classrooms.
So that was my point. That's part of what BCS,
That is.
regardless of E.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's so it's not any more money.
I got the wrong impression from Armand then, because I heard it that we didn't put dollars, but when I asked how much, he said it would be considerable. And it had nothing, and I said outside of repurposing the library, because that was already in. So I am unclear with that, because I heard the conversation a little bit differently.
Because if it's 5, let's just say, to build out 5 classrooms at Blue Mountain is $500,000, but to bring in modulars is $500,000. It's, now you're in the same.
Yeah, but it's also a big decision.
It
Yeah.
is, it's a huge decision.
I don't mean the
Big
money,
decision.
I mean putting the children in the building.
But I think from what I was hearing, to recapture everything, no one is saying we prioritize moving 5th grade to Blue Mountain. We're not prioritizing that.
Only,
If we had to, as a last resort.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not doing this, that no one sitting in my seat is doing this in a few years.
could I ask this question to
Wow.
build confidence in that concern? A new guy question.
Okay.
Was there consideration of moving 5th grade to Blue Mountain Middle School before the implementation of the Princeton plan as a result of any concerns of space?
It was in the Castillo and Silky study
Okay.
originally that got us here.
But his question was, did we ever, if I heard you right, before we talked about banding, was there ever a spatial limitation that presented itself that the district considered moving 5th grade pre-2017?
I thought the study said you were closing a building when you moved it.
It was, yeah.
So in the
So
old
the
studies, they
answer is
were
no.
closing a elementary school to move it.
And that's where you, yeah,
That's where you got it from.
And for the public at home, the board, I don't think the board is doing this on purpose, but our next question deals with library spaces. As a focus question.
Just insert one thing on, just not to forget, and again, just to remind you at that facilities, because I probably won't be there, but you will be. And the Furnace Woods that both of them walk through, so to go through that walkthrough again and look at those spaces around the gym, which would be smaller spaces, but would then free up larger classrooms that are being used, let's say, for reading as an example. So you don't need those larger rooms, which creates classroom space. I thought you said it was about 2 or 3. It could be 2 to 3 rooms we up.
It really depends
Right.
how you split it up.
Exactly.
So you need to probably have Armand look at that because that's not anything. That's nothing more than taking
Yeah.
utility space, converting to inner, like offices or small reading rooms, and then freeing up classrooms that are currently being used for those purposes, which would free up, say, 2 to 3 rooms.
So are we okay as a straw poll here? We're all comfortable to take E out here?
Yeah.
I'm comfortable as long as
Comfortable.
you're.
I don't. I think it's a huge decision to move 5th grade to the middle school. Our middle school already has its own bag of issues as it is right now, as far as all those kids together, and I think adding younger kids to that mix is just begging for something else. So for me, I personally wouldn't.
I disagree.
I disagree
I
with
disagree.
what you're saying a lot.
A lot, I do.
Because I actually think there's so many benefits to having 5th with 6, having had 3 kids that are beyond that. So, I mean, 6th grade is like a third wheel at 6th, 7th, and 8th. Okay, it's a huge problem. Our 7th and 8th graders, many of them play in high school athletic programs because we have a decreased number of kids that are interested in athletics. The 6th grade doesn't get a lot of opportunity to do many things, and they're by themselves often. Outside in town sports, 5 and 6 are always together. And they've grown up together basically since kindergarten because that's how we were in a community school model. They do a lot of things together already, and they're much, as far as teachers, you're a certified K through 6 teacher, so I see there's benefits there. I see it as an opportunity to reinvent an intramural program, having kids more active in clubs. And we are seeing a loss of clubs now in high school because kids haven't done them ever now until high school. And now they're already busy doing whatever they're busy with. So we have no kids interested in clubs. I understand the bus a little bit. I understand it as a fear or an unknown. Having experienced it, I don't have fear anymore, but I can see it as a first-time parent. I could see it as someone who hasn't had the experience where you could feel like that it would be hard.
Jen, I feel like, because I'm in middle school too now.
Mhm.
I'm having a much different experience. Not because of the school, just because of the age. So I'm just gonna let you know, if someone, I would never want to go there in 5th grade. Just 2 different kids, 2 different experiences. And I'm saying that in 5th grade, he was still in elementary school and it was still part of the elementary school. Middle school, for some kids, it is a very different type of experience.
Do you think it's possible though that this could change the experience?
Yes.
I think that it might actually make it worse.
I don't know, it might be case dependent. I mean, I work in a middle school.
Mhm.
And sometimes when I see the interactions between the older students, that like the 8th graders and the 6th graders, there's certain times where I'm like, but it's case dependent. Then there's other times where they do get to play some sports together or do things. It's hard to say what anyone's experience will be because it is so different.
Mhm.
But the age difference between when I see a 6th grade student in my building versus an 8th grade student, you can tell there's a clear difference. I mean, even size wise, for the most part, there's a big difference. Maturity level, there's a big difference.
You know what's really funny you're saying? So, like, I had a 9th grader who was probably one of the smallest kids in their whole grade. He grew up, he's now a full-grown person. When we started 9th grade, he was.
Going into
Tiny.
10th grade is usually when that growth
Right, so
happens.
you're,
Like that's when.
But then you're talking the same thing at the elementary. I think this is a bigger conversation. I just don't want us to make. I don't think any of us have enough information unless you have been through it. Or listening to other people or experiencing to say that. It's not, let's put it, it's not the worst idea ever. It's definitely something that we need more conversation around for sure. Yes.
May I want to share something? So if you look at E, there's something else to think about. You're leaving K1, a 2-year.
I know that, that was my next, that was my next.
And if
So
we're trying to avoid that by getting out of what we have now,
Yeah.
we're going right back into that.
So my next thing that I was gonna say, that was gonna lead in was that I think the goal here is to keep children together in the same place for as long as possible from the earliest age possible. So unless we need to do this for space or whatever, I think it's off the table. I just wanna make sure that we're all comfortable with that, right?
And I think it might be helpful to talk to a district who does 5-8, like coming from, I worked in a district that was 5-8, Carmel. And we had our share of
Yeah.
discipline issues a lot. So maybe even, talking to a couple of districts who does that, what is the advantage and disadvantages so we can weigh in.
But it also sounds with the configuration of Plan E needing to have a K1 component in a separate building.
Yes.
To make that
It's a lot.
happen, that will make it a continual for the board.
Right. So are we comfortable taking this off the table? Raise that, we should probably, should we raise that? Off the table?
Sure. So part of that discussion involved library spaces. The next board focus question. What are the board's reflections and future thoughts on spaces such as the kitchen at FPL, library media spaces, STEM spaces, and do our thoughts on those learning spaces give any priority to any one of these plans in why?
I would say all of our media in the library spaces being sold, which is part of. The STEM spaces are currently in our library spaces, which maybe could work if they were renovated, right? So that you could create actual classroom spaces out of your STEM space versus just like a little section out of a classroom. But I don't know if for me, I don't know if the kitchen is just separate.
So
But
if I'm hearing you're saying none of these plans provide an attractive component to them that makes this a priority.
it's just a priority.
Okay.
I'm just, sorry, I'm kind of, because these are specialist library STEM, so on and so forth. Have we looked at what specials look like in these plans that still stand? Which is A,
What is
B,
STEM?
G? And does it, like, everything remains, nothing is impossible?
Right.
But I guess to follow through with that, when we talk about now having 3 grades, potentially if we go with G, teacher wise, for those specials, would one teacher still be able to do that, or would what, like, potentially a teacher have to share buildings, like be a 2nd grade at Furnace Wood and then be 3rd grade half the week at FGL?
That's what we're doing now, right?
Yesterday, so.
Art shares.
That's,
Yeah.
yes, art shares, library will share.
All 3 now.
But
Last
they
year
do
it wasn't a
anyway.
share, now.
They do it.
We have sharing now
Like,
with specials.
it appears that, it appears that we now have A, B, and G. So when we leave here tonight, whether it stays with those 3 or it goes one less, all those things would be the next thing that we would factor in. If they're at staff, what is the cost of that? If there is a cost or a reduction, if one of the plans is closing, repurposing BD, we would show you what that would look like, et cetera.
So again, the same, an externality of these focus questions allows us, as we said before, to bring our focus on some of those integral parts of plans into place, because we now don't have to plan out that separate variables.
I guess what would be interesting is to look at. So I think one of the concerns that's come out of the current plan is what lunchtime looks like, and so I think that would be so it's not really on here. But what would would we have to make any modifications to our cafeteria or serving area? And also, could we create spaces that allow for, whether we work in cohorts or however it would be, more kids in a lunchroom at the same.
Master schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Especially in,
furnace, I mean,
FGL,
well,
like especially in FGL, they're older kids, they can probably handle.
Yeah.
And there's bigger spaces.
right, which is opposite of what's happening at furnace now, because they
Right.
don't have the space.
I think it's the capacity of the kitchen
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
capacity to
right.
have it around.
Right,
Okay.
What can we do?
but they used
I
to,
will add in.
so for example, FGL, there's
Mhm.
like 80 kids in a grade and they used to do full more.
There was years ago over 90.
Okay, so 80 kids in a grade and they would have lunch all at the same time. So that's probably 2 lunches maybe per grade.
Yeah, with that number, you need 4 or 5 in that.
I
If it goes up to
Yeah.
even at 100, you still need 5 sections.
So I'm just saying per grade, you would have 2 lunches. Right, because if it's 160 kids, then you do half and you do half.
Yeah, but it's
So
3,
half
4,
goes to
5, so it's
recess.
still 6.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
totally.
You're saying
That's
six.
what you're
She's saying
saying.
currently,
Yeah.
currently in the existing 4-5 building,
Mhm.
one of the grades has 3 lunch periods,
Correct.
correct? So she's saying at Frank G,
You could have more.
you could
Have
have, you
more
could cut that to
kids.
2, so kids are not fragmented into groups of 3.
Right, we could have a recess lunch switch,
Right,
right,
yes,
3 times.
right.
Yes.
So the grades are together.
Which leads me into, and I don't know if this is.
But isn't that what they're doing now at FGU?
Cause I know that's
No.
tricky.
There's like an,
Well,
there's like an odd,
It depends on
odd
what building
class
you're in.
size out, like there's an odd man out,
Okay.
essentially, so like, I'm just gonna, I don't know what grade it is. Let's say 3rd grade has 2 sections that switch recess lunch, there's another section that does not, so they're the odd man out.
They're by themselves.
Yeah, they're by themselves, or.
So
I
the
don't know
question
if
is,
third
can
grade, I
you take
just
that
made up
3rd
that.
grade, split it in half, that other section, and half go each way? That's what we'd have to be
So
creative.
we need to, I think that what we really are gonna need to see now is the next steps of like, I'm not telling you to build a mass schedule.
Yeah, no, but that's that's a
A
question we
sample,
can
what
ask.
this might work,
Yes.
right? And how can we get the teachers on? Is it possible, having more of them in the same place, to actually get them in cohorted in a minimum of 3 or 4, so they actually have common prep time?
I think that's doable because of the number of, specialists they have. I mean, I think it
That's
just
how
has
you-
to take some
that's- the common
scheduling.
Prep is based on the specials that are available in any given timeframe.
And I don't think it would have to be like every day, but I think it's,
We were
As
just
many
having
as
this
possible.
discussion.
we should probably strive for that, because I think that would help across the board.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we strive for, having everybody in the same building.
And I guess we should also ask, like when we're taking lunchtime, if there was any like modifications we might have to make to the kitchen or the cafeteria to fix, like, maybe like instead of having a 1-way entrance, maybe having like 2 or
Right.
like separate, like a hot lunch, a cold lunch
Yeah,
kind of
if you're
thing,
just
like a
getting milk,
sandwich.
like a kiosk, so you could
Yeah.
just grab your milk and not be in the hot food line as well, why don't?
Or if you're grabbing a pre-made sandwich,
Exactly.
Mhm.
like have a section for that to alleviate the hot lunch line. To see like what that would look like, and then we could offer that to the facilities to see what the cost would be.
Yeah, because we have a lunch one.
Yeah.
We also talked about, this is like a little bit on topic, a little off topic, but we also talked, I know, and Margaret and I spoke a little about it too, it was after Dr. Peg, about making. Oh, yeah, do I wanna call it that? I don't know, houses, is that what Dr. Peg called
It was-
it, houses?
Kind of like Hogwarts.
Yeah. So
Team
like,
Slytherin.
I would like to know more, for me to feel good about grade banding, 160 kids or whatever together. I need to know more about how those grades are structured. So maybe we can, like, what's it gonna look like, right? So if we shift next year into any, you stay like we are, or you go to G. Maybe we start with the next kindergarten group, but if it's a grade of 120, can we make 2 cohorts of 60? So that my biggest concern has been dilution year over year. So you can move from grade to grade and not know almost anybody in your class.
Relationship.
I always said we need to have, there needs to be an algorithm. What is it? I've never got it because there is none. I think that the kids need to have familiarity from year to year. And then we have to think, how do we, okay, so they're all in the same place though, so what's the point, right? If you're gonna cohort them. How do you, there are reasons, but how do you make them blend as well? So I think for me, to keep children in this grade banded model, I need to know if we're planning to be more intentional with the children as they move from one grade to the next.
Are you thinking K1 Tuesday, I'm gonna use letters just because it makes my life easier. So you have A and B.
Yep,
Red and green,
yep,
triangle, triangle, square.
yep,
They follow up, first grade is triangle, square again. The second grade is triangle, square again, but you
Yeah.
mix them up in their triangle, square.
exactly.
Yes. But when they get to third, fourth, and fifth, we should be blending them more from triangle, square and making them octagons and hexagons.
I mean,
Because we want them to be prepared for that transition of when they're now the social piece is coming, and this is when all the drama starts, is about third grade. It used to be sixth, but we're really down to third. So we've got to start thinking that way. So if we think K2, you keep the triangles and the squares and you mix them amongst their own shapes.
sure,
And then when they hit 3, 5, you mix them across shapes.
yeah, right.
How'd you like that?
I do.
I don't know if I followed it. but I got it.
And I also think going with that, I loved after that follow-up, when she had emailed about that, like houses within. I would love, no matter what we pick to get either Dr. Peg or any other master who can come help and just run through all of those like kind of things so that we can get more information so that, again, everything that we're doing is intentional.
Yes, which leads me to, I've been saying this, I think individually, but I feel like I need to say it here. My biggest worry with Plan B is we talk about how it can be really challenging for the kids to go from community schools to middle school in sixth grade. I'm nervous to take second graders from their little community school and put them into FGL and be
Third grade, like
I'm
they're still
scared.
little.
It's the drama. I'm telling you, that drama is happening much earlier in life for these kids. And that's where you're gonna start to see what you saw and that's happening from 5 to 6 is gonna happen from 2 to 3.
That's my worry. I think it's a lot for a 7 or 8 year old to go from being a big fish in a little pond.
Yep.
And then you get thrown into this big school, you know, and I really liked, and I still do like pieces of Plan B. There's a lot of things about it that I loved and that I still like. But there are definitely some major concerns for me about that second to third transition.
Can I, just to piggyback on what you're saying, I had a note somewhere here, but I can't find it now, of course, because why would I find it now? I was just gonna say that in Plan B also, just looking at the breakup and just the student makeup, the bodies are completely different in those two schools, right? Like when you look at the makeup of the student body there, it's completely different. The class sizes are different. I don't think we can go to that when we continue to talk about equity in our schools, because there's clearly gonna be one side that's gonna have less kids, like, you know, in Plan B, Furnace Woods would have 215 and BV would have 265. So, I mean, if we're gonna talk about equity and doing everything that we can across the district for all of our children, that should be important as well, right?
I'm also gonna say, with Plan B, we lose some opportunity. So we have to consider that.
What do you mean?
Growing of our potential.
I'm
Bringing in, educating our students in our location from an earlier age. More of them is a definite opportunity. We don't have that in the other plans. And reminder that pre-K is optional. We don't have any promises that we were making, but we are working on it. That's a big opportunity. I think another opportunity is to getting our technology team and then eventually our district office staff somewhere centralized where they can actually all be in the same place, right?
That's the next question, by the way.
Right, so there are opportunities that we don't have with Plan B. Plan B, you know, was a way to get compromise for everyone, but we have to remember, we did not know that this worked until 2 weeks ago. until tonight.
It is Plan B. Just, you only have one.
That's right. It's plan B with only one building and then a wealth of opportunity at the Buchanan for Plank School, right? So I know where I'm at.
I think-
it's with this.
I don't know why, like, so I'm asking you all why Plan B would be better than Plan G. I can think of one thing. Plan BV is much closer to my house than Furnace Woods. Anybody?
I just wanted to throw out because I'm looking at it and I'm torn. I really am, and I'm gonna piggyback off what you said. I look at the numbers for BV and Furnace Woods, and then we look at the makeup. But I wanna be clear what we do. Because just moving kids to different buildings is not changing any outcome for these children. So without being purposeful, I don't really care what plan you're in. I mean, if you have a class that has extra ENL students, you should have supports for that. If you have a class that has extra, a high percentage of free and reduced lunch students, maybe you should have an after-school program for that. I mean, I think what we've done, we just moved kids.
But we
And
can
we-
do more with our resources, because if you think about it this way, in Plan B, if you have a couple ENL students in Furnace Woods, and then you have a higher concentration at BV, but you only have one ENL teacher.
Okay.
So we can take that resource and make it much more, go much further if all the K-2 students were together at Furnace Woods.
And I think intention, right, is our key that we're doing. We have to go back and be purposeful and intentional with everything that we're doing, that we go as we go forward, right? So yeah, putting kids in a classroom together or just moving them around in different buildings, it's what we're doing that needs to matter the most, right? What the outcome is that we're looking to accomplish that we need to focus on in the end.
So as a reminder, that's part of
You're saying the same.
Just to point out, because I'm looking at this objectively, I walked in here, remember, and
I know.
I offered Plan B. Because at the time, and you've come a long way, so I just want to make an observation. Because I've even changed my mind from B. You know, and I would lean more toward G. Mainly because of the arguments that have been, I don't want to say arguments, the discussion that's taken place over time. In the beginning, there was such a split on the board, and there was neighborhood school versus banding. And that was my compromise, to do a little bit of one, a little bit of the other. I think with Dr. Peg, with Maurice and all, I want to remind everybody what we did. We looked at facts, we looked at research, we listened to experts. We didn't have that in February.
No.
And what we've come to now is we're coalescing around what appears to be G, for even the reasons that around this table, you all didn't have agreement on 3 months ago. And you've come a long way. That's all I have to say. I'm proud of it.
Because I think that so at the end of the day, we have to figure out what is the best educational model for the students of Hendrick Hudson, based on what we know today, based on where we came from. I think that I'm gonna say that Plan B had a slightly higher cost in staffing, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
Just
one
by 3.
up one or so.
but we were potentially gonna save on busing there.
Yes,
Okay. Again, it's always like this huge cost savings you get. It's almost, it's like a facade.
How does G have the lowest amount?
I don't know, there's a couple of things on there, but G, I think when we run G, I think when you guys run it, you're gonna find that there's actually some type of savings in there.
Yes.
And I think there should be potentially savings with transportation as well, because we're only busing to school, 2 schools. I think we then have to move, is that, we have to know, I think we kind of have to know that, right? We have to show that.
well, if you look just clearly at 45 teachers to support B versus 42 to support G, it's 3. That's at least $500,000 easily. That alone.
Right, and maybe we would turn it to some sort of
Right.
services
There's
rather than
reading
just.
it.
There's other things.
Right?
E&L
Right.
support.
There's
Support.
an E&L,
Yes.
E&L, and maybe we have to think of how we were doing E&L differently than what we're doing now. If we don't think it's best or newcomers or whatever, let's reinvest it.
Well, part of what, I just want to say one thing, part of what you brought, the significance of the BV repurposing. We haven't, and that should be I think is that one of the topics? We have,
It's not a focus question. but it's-
no, but one of the things is, so what are we doing with repurposing? You've mentioned about the increasing, you're going from 36 to the full amount for pre-K, and they're our students. So there's definitely a positive. We know anecdotally, I'm saying that because I don't have it in fact, but we know anecdotally that the teachers in kindergarten saw that those kids coming out of that program were one up on the ones that came out of the provider program. Obviously, our certified teachers, I would assume that would happen, okay? And then in addition to that, the other piece of repurposing is back to the last question about restructuring with the administrative team and looking at where does the Vinita's team and technology people go. And we know from conversations with Lisa, there are other programs that would be cost benefit to the district. They would accommodating some of our own that we're not sending out and still having space to bring new revenue in.
Okay.
So those are the cost things that we needed to get to by narrowing it down, because when we had them 8, it was
And
too much.
Those items that
But
you're
we can.
talking about,
Mhm.
which we don't have to get into now, are really student focused.
Yes.
Like they really are. They're what's best for kids.
I can just give you 2
Yes,
examples.
that'd be great.
Right now, I sign off on all the tutoring in the district for anybody that's suspended, anybody. Just recently, I signed up on one tutor's form, and it was $1,100 for a week. So if we talk about not sending our kids home for suspension, but we can take a part of that wing and block it off and have our own exit entrance and do a K5, a K6 and a 7-12 and have a teacher man it, right? That saves us money. We eventually then, if you need to or want to, we can offer that to other districts to send their suspended kids. And we would do the same process as our tuition kids. We do an intake, we meet them, we do XYZ. The other thing that I said to Mike and Dennis is IDT Elementary. I built one at Southern Westchester BOCES, and it has a psychiatric component. We are finding,
Could you go through the acronym of IDT?
oh, intensive,
huh?
no, I forgot.
Catching up.
Thanks, Mike. Intensive day treatment. So it's usually a 30-day placement through mental health. When we built it at Southern Westchester BOCES, we built it ourselves. So I had a three time a week psychiatric person, a psychiatrist that came, met with kids. There was a full-time teacher, a teaching assistant, and a social worker all combined. And I think at the time we were charging $400 a day for districts to send. We are finding more and more of our younger kids are so dysregulated. And that's kind of like let's flip the switch and start over, get you some breaks. It's a whole nother environment. It's still within our school, and then we get you back to the classroom.
So there's even more, there's just a lot of opportunity.
I was
There are.
also thinking with BV, as a teacher, we can use it for the space for professional development, right, for PD.
Yes, we did.
So that we don't have to send teachers, because there is a cost to go to all the other ones. We could do in-house PD, and there's a space for that.
And I just wanted to clarify on the FTE for Plan A and B, that number includes the pre-K.
I was gonna say that might be
Plan G
pre-K.
does not.
Does not.
Yes.
That's what I was
okay.
thinking.
Oh,
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's not
The other
pre-K.
cost savings you're thinking about too, and this is just me being selfish, is our nurses, right? You won't need a nurse out at that building. Oh my gosh, we now have our own nurse, and we're not finding this through BOCES or whatever.
Oh.
And we're never not having nurse coverage, because
We have to float, we don't have to.
We use
eliminate
one
them,
of them,
float them.
right, use one of them to float through the buildings, right? So I think those are some really important cost savings. You talk about the secretarial staff, you talk about all the specials. They then get moved around and shuffled around. There may be cost savings there. We don't know that, but it's things to think about.
There's also one less bus run.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right.
So when
Well-
we're talking about cost savings, because remember, their original plan was said to do something that it didn't deliver. And your taxpayers know that. So when I'm looking at these plans, I really, like, definitely, I'm glad that we're looking at students and being student-centered, but we also have to look at what the cost savings is, because we owe that to the taxpayers.
And I think.
They need to know that.
Right, and I think in the next, if we're narrowed down here to a point where we have a couple of weeks where they can focus on that,
Yeah, we can get that.
we can get that. I think we can get that, right? Can we get that? And
The cost savings.
I have a question. For everybody.
I don't think I would wanna take B off there and not compare it to G. Like, I think I can say with everything that we've just discussed, that G, that I see why everyone's going to G. But to just take B off and not show the taxpayers what it is, I'm not comfortable with that.
So
Okay, but I have a
no, but we showed B, we should. You mean G or B?
They should be
B to
able to,
G.
they should be able to compare it.
But we
To
have
be able to
even,
give us that cost savings in comparison, you'd have to allow the administrative team to have leeway in proposing potential income generating programs in a scenario that would allow that. Would the board be okay with that? And it would be back of the envelope, it would be hypothetical, but it would be within a realm of what we know as best within our educational experience. Does that make sense? Or would you only want to see what costs may be eliminated?
For me, I think that the taxpayers, if I'm a taxpayer, I think that I would want to know what it is right now. I mean, I know that you have potential to do things, but I don't know if that's gonna come to fruition. So I would want to know, I want to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. And I don't want to be sitting here like the old board and be told that this is gonna do this, and it doesn't happen.
Debating.
So
that
Yes.
you get.
So we have a history of opportunities as a sale of the thought that don't come to fruition. So I would highly support the back of the table napkin math that shares what could happen, but not that says, if you do this, we're gonna do this, because so far, we've only been promised what we're gonna do, but it hasn't happened. And I can list you the examples that are all within the past handful, you know what I'm saying? And it's not there's a lot of different things going on, but I don't want to be sold a plan as a baseline of what could be. I want to know what it will be based in September, unless we decide to do something else. But I'd love to know what those opportunities could be, but sold as future opportunities and very hypothetical.
Could we put a price on open spaces potential?
You mean rentable space?
No, for instance, if
Just say
there
it
is,
frees up this much.
right, it frees up and we could do. I mean, it's easier to say no, and we just,
I would just say freeze this up. I mean, we could talk about what that could be, but it may change. If you said to use it for PV, we may not want to use it for generator.
I mean, if we're gonna, to piggyback on what you're saying, right, if we're gonna do the comparison of what this number looks like against this number, I would also like to ask that we get just a cost of what it would do to do all the things that Peg talked about, building bridges between the grades in our current model, right? Like, what does that look like for us? And what's the cost that's implicated in that? If we decide to go that route, because I agree with you, we need to see everything in order to say to the community, hey, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and this is the cost that's associated with what we've decided to do.
I think it'll be differentials. Go ahead.
I know we want to be fiscally responsible, and I'm not saying that we aren't, but is there a dollar amount that would say, I would want to do Plan B, knowing that it might not be what's best for the district in terms of growth or in terms of what we're doing for our students? Is there a dollar amount that we're looking for that would be like, nope, at this point, I would prefer to do that over that?
Going back to Indian Point and your projections, which can be found on board docs, I would think that would be a taxpayer question. I mean, is it 1% increase, a 2% increase? I think that, I mean, I'm gonna say it again. I know we're talking about, we have low income students, but according to the census, your biggest population of low income people in this area
is senior citizens. So if you ask them that question, they'd probably have a much different answer than me.
But if
That's,
but at the end of the day, if our school district is not best or good, and their home values are not going to increase because of it over time.
if they can't afford to live in their home.
This,
Yeah, but we can't-
the differential, and I could be completely out of turn, so don't. But the differential between these plans cannot be very large.
Yeah, and
So
that's,
I-
you just need to see
We
it.
do need to see it, we do need to see it, but I also think that we need to decide what is best for the students, for the future. Because if, let's just say, model B is more affordable by a couple $100,000, and that's the way the board wants. The board doesn't wanna go that way, they wanna go a different way that's not any savings compared to what we're doing now. Or it costs a little bit of money. Then maybe it's still the decision, it's just you need to be fiscally responsible and look at other things, right? So I think the difference between them, we need to know it, but I don't think it's very big.
That's what I'm trying to say. Plan B costs more than Plan A. We knew that last year. That. Last year we knew it. Plan B costs more than Plan A. I think. If you
I don't think we knew that.
We did, no, we did because we were hired, we hired an organization, we hired, no, it was different, it was a negligible. I think it was negligible. We ended up hiring the music teacher. And then we had one other expense. It was negligible. If you look at the FTEs here, you're talking Plan G is 42. And Plan B is 45, and Plan A is 44. So like, what numbers we're gonna be, I guess I'm not understanding, I'm gonna go back to what Alexis said. I'm just gonna go back right to it, because I don't think we answered the question. If we have to go around the room one by one, we can. With Plan B, why is Plan B more desirable than Plan G? I wanna know what
My point is that the community deserves, so you're saying that it's negligible. I'm saying, yes, you're right, but that needs to be shown and put up on board docs. It can't just be like, well, I know it in my head because of transportation, and then there's 42 teachers that could be 44.
We were 45 to 42, and we're definitely running less buses. It's a fact.
Well, wait, hang on a second. You have more kids, you might be running the same buses, because it's still the same number of kids, like butts and seats.
Runs different.
It's the runs.
I know they'll become more efficient, but you might not be.
We
able
have
to
3 set time schedules, 3 different bus runs.
But I'm saying that there's gonna be more children going to Furnace.
Yes,
Woods.
but remember,
So you might need more buses.
we cut the buses. We loaded, remember our buses can, what is the number, 70? It could go to, we don't do that. We picked a much lower number because there were complaints. And she set this year's bus schedule with, I don't remember, we went with 45 or 50, 55. 50 or 55. So there's still room on a bus. And
Okay.
there's shorter runs. It was the longer runs with all those kids that was causing the problem. So if you're running a shorter one around, a cluster, again, G versus B are different.
Okay.
They'll be on a bus less.
I agree that there's savings, I just think that.
But we can,
you want buses.
I only wanted to say that in all fairness, because I just know there's another group that will squawk if we don't say this. We should use our baseline of Plan A, then build B
Yeah.
and G off of it.
Differential.
We
To
agree
show
about
you,
to talk about costs compared to current
Right.
configuration.
it's only the fairest. We got you.
We're keeping.
So wait, I have a question. Okay. You wanna
We
go
didn't,
first?
I still wanna know what, I hear what Stephanie is saying, but I still wanna know what do we think, why do we think B is more desirable?
Because close to home. For a
K2.
smaller community. But that's why I say agree. We gotta
That's
make
what
that.
you said, but you already answered it, no one else did. Why is it more desirable?
I can't think.
Yeah, I don't have a positive.
I mean, for me, that's always been it, right? It's keeping kids closer to home and shortening bus ride times.
And it's
But
less
it's-
transition.
If you guys, this is what I was just
Eliminating
showing Stephanie, if we can can you just go to make up the enrollment body for the state? That shows the ethnicity.
Which
Ethnicity. Can't even speak today.
It's a Plan B.
plan.
Plan B.
That's page 5, right?
And if we just look at the makeup of the schools on just that If we're sitting here and we're saying we want to do what's best for kids and we want to make sure that we're integrating our community the way it should be, the way we are now, we look at these numbers, it's very lopsided. And I
Okay,
don't,
and I'm gonna agree with you with that. I'm not even gonna disagree because I'm looking at this, but if I'm gonna then again go back. If you look at any, and this kind of makes me a little bit angry, so I'm gonna try not to turn angry. When people talk about the diversity part, and I do agree with that. And they leave out the inclusion and equity part, just moving the kids around did not do anything for these students. So the equity and the inclusion is still not there. So, and if you look up on the internet, bad DEI policies, the first one that pops up is diversity for diversity's sake. So I do agree with you, but I think my
intention.
the intention there, my thought in putting the costs up is to be as transparent as possible. Because, you know, you go back from, I think it was a 2 million, 3 million, then 1 million savings with all the Princeton plan talk, and then a no savings. I think that the community, so you know it, and you're saying
It's gonna
it.
be, I know that it's gonna be the same as A and B last year, which when the community got up here and said, Plan B is gonna cost you so much money, I was sitting here going, it's negligible. $1.4 million or $2.4 million, which is what was originally projected, is a lot different than 100.
No, I
I
agree,
mean, like,
but why can't we just show
I
it?
think she's just asking to prove out that.
Just prove out it.
I
That's
understand that. I just wanna know, so we're gonna keep Plan B on the table right now, because we wanna show this at the next meeting.
I would like to know from the trustees if anybody finds A more attractive than G.
Yeah, no.
I also would like, I mean, if we're gonna go forward, Furnace Woods is a 4-5 building, it's just not a long-term solution.
It's not a long term.
So we have to do major renovations there to make it a long-term solution, so that's money and we gotta talk about it.
So
It doesn't work right now.
just to connect that to our focus, that would deal with question 1, which the public can see on board documents, an effort that helps consolidate spaces for classroom use and pre-operational efficiencies. We would look at any of those capital concerns.
Yeah, and I think that in Plan A, a conversation would have to be had, similarly to why G is built the way it is, that Frank G. Lindsay and Furnace Woods would have to swap because of the space and what is right for children in an educational facility. And I think that's what Jen's saying.
If we're making a long-term, this is long-term.
So, being a process guy, could we look at questions 1 and 6? Do we feel that we as a governing body have discussed those within the larger context of some of the smaller conversations that we've had? If I could recap it, an appropriate wait time there.
Yeah.
Did you count?
Yeah. What I've captured to try to see what we need to do as an administrative team to provide you data to help keep the conversation going, but to also take away some of our priorities. Our priorities out of tonight's discussion is the board wishes to keep any current class size policy in place as articulated before. So that's K at 22, first at 20, 2 at 22, 3 at 22, and 4 through 6 at 26, which helped us decide upon some of the spaces work within those class sizes. That would be find those plans that did that. In terms of special education, we would like to keep programs for students in the grade band in school or location where they're at. The movement of 5th grade to move out of middle school is not a priority for the board and will only come up if a plan such as G did not fit. And then if we fit in G and E is not plan feasible, we're okay with removing Plan E. Okay. So we will update our documents after this meeting that are public facing and internal to reflect that Plan E has been removed on the 15th of November. We are left then with plans A, B, G, or Alpha, Bravo, and Golf, and looking for, keeping that in mind, we prepare the feedback sessions for the staff, which is on the 20th, and the community, which is on the 27th, but also the associated public hearing on this. We will present those plans for the feedback and any other feedback that people may wish to hear, but those will be the plans of those. What we would look to do with these priorities in place to provide further data to the board is to look at these plans that we have in place as, do we have anything where we can have shared staff consolidations, opportunities for them to engage in professional learning? I don't know how to articulate what Lisa said in terms of squares and circles, so perhaps keeping student cohort type models for social connections. Did that do a good job? Okay. Also looking at the impact, what can we do with lunches in these models narrowed down? Common prep time. That's would be the marching order for the administrative team to help provide you with for future conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. I also have that Margaret is going to update the class capacity chart with sections. We're going to look to revisit 10-year historical enrollment. We can pull that out and to schedule a walkthrough for certain board members who can attend. Keep in mind the number who could of furnace ones. Did I miss anything?
When we do the 10-year historical enrollment, can you also show next to the enrollment, the staffing? So the public can see enrollment and the number of staff we had all the way down for the 10 years.
For 10 years?
I have it.
I'll take.
Do you
You
want
want
to
to have staffing for 10 years?
I do.
It does.
Please share.
I will.
Save us a lot of time.
You have total staff, but you don't have elementary.
Just, you don't have just elementary.
Well, I
You have a
did,
total
Yeah, it
staff.
would be in the old.
Well, we will give you the
books.
total enrollment. of
The
district.
budget books.
You're gonna give an elementary enrollment.
We
We're
have-
gonna go 10-year total enrollment.
yeah, we're doing total
Oh.
enrollment. So you know what? I, in leaving Plan B on the table, okay? I agree with what you said. My point in leaving Plan B is just that I think that this community should know the costs associated with it. That is my intention. Just to be as transparent as,
I thought I'm gonna say that, I thought we did that last year.
No, but that
we
can be
did,
compared.
but how about the
Yeah,
pre-K people and the people who are new to kindergarten? Like, yes, we did, you know, like
But if the
we,
work is done, it won't be
it won't be
difficult,
difficult.
and then.
it's just throwing it on there.
So we'll find cost compared here for Bravo and Golf.
We still didn't answer the question. Why is B more desirable than D? For you.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna
Honestly,
recap from what I've heard, maybe I don't know if she finds it more desirable. I think she just wants to use it as a basis now of comparison
That's fine.
for the other
Well-
one. I don't know if I recapped that correctly.
Another piece that's desirable is that it does leave you
This room.
with space. Not so much,
Yeah, I just don't know if she finds it
Preschool.
more desirable. I think she just is saying then what I'm hearing, which I appreciate your transparency immensely, is that she just wants to see what the cost would be. And then if we are ever going to talk about a cost savings, then we have those numbers if we are talking about it
I just don't want to be.
and how we're spending our money.
Yes, I don't want to be accused of not being as transparent as we can. And if you're new to the district, you did not watch these board meetings last week.
Wait,
I'm gonna tell
you
you.
did.
lots of people did, our viewership is down.
We have 35 people watching right now on the live stream.
Last year we got hundreds, I think we're doing something wrong. Or right, you're doing it right.
We got policy reasons.
No, we're not.
What's next?
Policy reading. Led by you.
I feel like our viewership is down.
You don't want it up again.
Might go
I
back up
said,
to the super-
out of those 35 people, Steph.
Does anybody have any questions on?
Yeah, mine was.
10%.
Am I reading now?
You're not.
Yeah, you're up.
Do you wanna, I could read anything if you don't want to.
I have a.
Oh, we have to talk about the budget development calendar or?
What?
Hold on, it's on the agenda, we gotta go in order.
You're first. Number 6, budget.
So, as part of the superintendent's report portion of our agenda, before my report, there is the budget development calendar for the board. I believe the board will be taking action on this, adopting this calendar at the next meeting, on the 29th.
Maybe you want to talk about.
Yes, definitely. So for the board, we have a proposed budget calendar for your consideration of adoption at our next meeting. We tried to keep dates similar to what they were last year and topics similar to what they were last year. However, I do want to point out to the board March 2nd, which would be a public full day line by line budget review of the proposed budget. So this would, if you want to envision one whole day.
I'd just like to say that Vice President Philbin from last year better be watching us. This was her.
Did she come in person?
Yes, she is.
What,
right
March
up.
when?
Saturday.
It's a Saturday. We would have our full administrative team on site to go through every major code and the lines in those codes to present to the board and the public our best thought of a budget as close to the adoption as possible. I've been in districts that have done this before. It's shared commisery, but what it does is it provides a fully transparent thought process of a proposed budget before the board makes its final adoption. And it's at that time where we have enough information to make the best guesses we can in terms of things such as state aid, the tax cap implications, any of those types of data that's needed, but also some time to answer questions and perhaps make some adjustments as we present to the board. The program budgets that you would see occurring on January 10th through February 8th, 28th, those would be presentations of those by the budget code owners, by our administrators, to say, here's what we did with the community approved budget for the 23-24 school year. Here's what we're thinking in terms of our major codes and in terms of increases or decreases and why. It wouldn't be specific dollar amounts. It would be, we anticipate our overall plant codes increasing because of an increasing cost of fuel, as an example. In the line by line budget review, we would break out all of those codes by their line item and explain to you where that actual movement may be and what it might look like. We would have time for board questions. I envision time also then for community questions. Whatever we are unable to answer at that meeting from the community or the board would be followed up on and placed on our website and communicated so that people have an understanding and all their questions answered going into as close as we can to the budget adoption and budget vote. Cool.
March what?
Saturday.
I got told that.
And what we would do is we would put out a schedule beforehand to the community. I envision perhaps doing the instructional program in the morning, the operational programs in the afternoon. So if you had a particular code that you are fond of, or care about, it would be live streamed as well, and also recorded.
So on March 2nd, who's the presenters are the owners of the codes?
Yes. So right now, the principals, our administrators, our cabinet members, they're preparing their proposed budget in a zero-based format. Budget code owners will meet with cabinet and they will present their budget to talk through their priorities and begin the process to build what's termed the superintendent's budget, which will then eventually become the board's budget after it goes through the iterations as adopted for community approval. So the process is starting.
Thanks.
So that'll be on the table for board's consideration at the next meeting. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay. I'll go.
We can sit down. Yeah.
We will definitely be able to stream and record. For,
Greg is already available, are you?
He's good, Greg's good. Matters, really.
Gonna be a standard chair.
I know, are you gonna sit that day?
Greg can have a baby.
Okay.
Should sit down there for 8 hours.
6 weeks.
Should we have it?
His wife is watching at home.
Should we have a snow day?
we can look to have a snow.
Yeah, then Sunday.
Just in case.
Or Sunday, gosh.
So I'm not going to my-
Still make it move.
Oh, God.
Bylaw.
So I'll transition into superintendent report and read it in quick.
Okay,
So,
great.
just so everybody knows, today is National Education Support Professionals Day. And I didn't know this until today. This is National American Education Week. But on this particular day, we come together to honor and celebrate the invaluable contributions of the dedicated individuals who play a crucial role in the educational system. These unsung heroes, from paraprofessionals and administrative staff to bus drivers and cafeteria workers, embody the spirit of a term we talk about so often: collaboration and commitment to fostering a positive learning environment for our students and our teachers. Their unwavering support extends beyond the classroom, impacting the lives of students and educators alike. And today we express our heartfelt gratitude for their passion, hard work, and unwavering dedication. So please please join me in taking a moment to recognize and appreciate the vital role these individuals play in shaping the future of our children and building the foundation of a thriving educational community. So very happy to take a moment to do that. Over the past 2 days, members of our site-based teams have worked with Mr. Bradley Geist, the Senior Director for Education of the Future. Our educators dedicated time to engage in professional learning on how to use research-based data analysis for the purpose of continuous school improvement. This training will support site-based teams in one role that they serve related to understanding yearly perception data, survey data, to help make informed decisions as part of the shared decision-making process model we have recently implemented. My thanks to the administrators and teacher leaders who took time out of their day and put the effort forth to engage in this work. And also thanks to our friends at the Hendrick Hudson Library for being such wonderful hosts. And also thank you to Carmen for supporting all the logistical needs of that day. Please join me in celebrating the success of some of our students in the fine arts realm of musicians. We had several students represent Hendrick Hudson at the New York State Music Association All Areas State Musical Festival held at New Rochelle High School on November 4th. Members of the All-State Band included Paulina Lastris Castron, Simon Eichenholz, and Laura Tucci. Members of the All-State Area Mixed Chorus included Max Lipton, Alex Elkin, Miles Merchant, and Kimberly Duncan served as the accompanist. And then members of the area All-State Mixed Treble Choir included Alexandra Numeroff, Elaine Clark, Nava Michino, and Mia O'Malley. Additionally, faculty member Erica Delner served as chairperson of numerous ensembles and also on the festivals committee. And Kimberly Duncan serves as the NISNA Association of Officers. So we congratulate all, and we have to also recognize the talented faculty and staff of our Fine Arts and Music Department who supported our musicians. And then I'd like to share parameters surrounding the use of our track and turf field. Recently, Mr. Tom Baker has worked hard to implement processes that afford the community use of our track. We will illuminate the track with the walking lights starting at sunset until 8:30, 7 days a week. And the community is welcome to use the track during this time period. But we do ask that the community keeps in mind the following. If there's a game or a contest going on the field, we do not allow walkers to be on the track. The track will not be open during the school day, and the district will not be leaving out equipment such as the goals or the lacrosse goals or field hockey goals. There were no responses to community inquiries from last meeting, and at this time, I have to, as my wife tells me, to tell my children to go to bed if they're watching. That is my report.
Can we just, we should also just remind people who use the track to just follow the rules posted, right? So no bikes on the track, no tents.
Motorized vehicles.
Yes.
No stroller.
No
nothing,
garbage.
no wheel.
And if you take garbage, this is like, we want to offer this. It's important, but we want our community to maintain the investment that we made.
And we do have posted signs that do clearly articulate that. And we do have a night watchman who is there to help protect the facilities as well. Thank you to the administration who put this in motion well before I did.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to our policy. I think, policies. All policies, multiple policies. I don't know what to do.
First, reading the policy. Fourth reading.
Independent educational evaluation. Take it from the.
Policy 4321.3. Independent educational evaluations. The Board of Education recognizes the right of parent and guardian of a student who has been classified as a student with a disability or suspected of having a disability to request an independent educational evaluation, i.e. at public expense if they disagree with the evaluation obtained by the Committee on Special Education. Yeah.
Can I make a motion to waive the reading?
Second.
All in favor? Want to explain? I was waiting. Well, I
was gonna let you go all the way too. I didn't.
It's also multiple.
Oh.
This
This chart,
Can
I
you
wanted to
explain
see how
that?
you were gonna
Why
read the
this is up?
chart.
That's another piece. Can we explain why we're
Why are we doing this?
So we actually updated this in 2018, I think was the last time, and I just wrote this again. 2018, and due to all the increase, well, we have some language changes that weren't clear in the first time, so the attorney did clean them up. But when you go to page 2, 3, and possibly 4, we had to update our rates because the rates were very outdated. We really need to do this every other year. But COVID hit us and the rates really went up dramatically. So the rates are actually increased and aligned with our local areas as well. So that's why we did it.
Can you explain to me who independent educational
Yep.
evaluation?
So an IEE, independent educational evaluation, is if your child is classified and you don't agree with the new psychological testing. So you'll say to me, I would really like to have an independent evaluation. And you say, I want my provider to do this. And I say, well, we're willing to pay this much money.
Okay.
And then if you say, well, but I can also offer you a BOCES person, which is independent because it's not us testing. I could offer you someone else in-house. If we do disagree as a district that you don't need to have an IE, we would take you to a due process hearing where we'd have attorneys involved saying, our testing is fine. You know, we don't typically do that. That turns into like some really animosity, but we do try to work collaboratively with the parent.
Okay, I understand.
And if I remember correctly, the policy is connected to the regulation.
Correct.
And the regulation you will update, but the policy itself does not have to be updated. You're updating the regulation for the cost.
Correct. I had to follow that for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regulations are what the superintendent and administrative team enact to carry out the board's policy.
do we want to put a note on here that we should update do we want to add that in here that we want to update it, like call it out in policy that we want to update that every other year? Do we want to go that far?
I think I don't know if you have a policy calendar, but it should just be put on there every other year. And that's only if the rates really jump dramatically.
But I think that the problem is if you make it a policy calendar, then that makes it a policy, then we're saying it's the regulation that's gonna be updated. So it's not on us to update it, it's on.
Oh, it'll be on my department. That's why I brought it to you, right?
Yes, so, but what I mean is, but if it's a regulation, we don't even have to be involved with the updating of it. Cause you are just gonna update it and we only need to update if anything here needs to change.
Correct,
And
correct.
there is this, the second to last sentence in the last full paragraph, I think does give policy.
It doesn't,
to that.
It does.
It
Yeah.
doesn't set a time.
Yeah, but I'll make sure I put it on my
But
calendar.
the
every
policy
year.
revision would be, I believe, part of the normal policy review cycle.
So what have we been charged? Like, what have we been?
We've been using the last rates. And and again, a lot of parents have allowed us to go through BOCES.
Uh-huh.
And people that haven't have maxed out what it was, and they would pay the extra.
Any questions on that policy? That was in our first reading. It'll be brought back, I guess, at our.
November 29th.
Okay, next policy is the fraternization between, no,
Yes.
yep. 9130, fraternization between school employees and students.
Policy 9130, fraternization between school employees and students. Intent of this policy, the relationship between the school, employee, contractors, agencies, or independent contractors, and the student. I read that wrong, I apologize. The red threw me off, whatever, I'm gonna start from the top, okay? The relationship between the school employee, contractors, agencies, or independent contractors and the student should be one of professional cooperation and respect. All employees, whether certificated or classified, have a responsibility to conduct themselves in a manner that will maintain an atmosphere that is safe, ethical, and conducive to learning. Staff must establish appropriate personal boundaries with students and not engage in any behavior that is unprofessional or that could reasonably lead to the appearance of impropriety.
Again. All in favor? So this is a brand new policy.
This is a brand new policy. And we do not.
Can we talk a little bit more about the guns?
We had to cover a lot here, right? So we're trying to make sure that we're trying to make sure that it is clear that of what the relationship between an employee and a student should be. And what the prohibited behavior looks like. And then we're also calling out the proper means in which employees should communicate with students.
Yeah, framework.
Yes, yeah. And we're trying to make sure that we're protecting both students and staff, by making sure that they're using the appropriate forms of communication, with students when need be.
Can I just ask something? This policy is only for, students that are actually attending. So if I'm a 12th grader and I went on to college and I friended a teacher, it doesn't apply. And my second question is, you're gonna have to help me with this, because I don't know. When it says staff members shall not have any social media connections with students on social media platforms, including but not limited to Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I don't know this, but if I'm a student and who has TikTok? If I friend you on TikTok, do you automatically come up in my friend group?
You have to accept friends?
You have to, I don't know, I don't know.
Well,
You have, and same with Instagram?
yes, but
If you're,
No.
I think depending on your
You
privacy
follow
setting.
somebody.
no, you
So-
unless you're public. If you're
Yeah, if
private,
your privacy settings are private, then you do need to
But if they're-
approve. But
but
if
if-
they're public,
they just
but as
follow you.
if best practice would be that you would be private, I'm assuming.
Well,
I know, but I'm just thinking for the younger teachers that, who've grown up on social media. I don't know. I'm just
So-
saying if I have a public one and a student friends me, am I in trouble with this policy?
They're not friendly, they're following you.
They're following,
They're
I think the
okay.
issue would be a staff member would not follow a student back, would be more
Okay, is that
appropriate.
how it
And
goes?
you're not communicating with them
Correct.
on these platforms.
Facebook would be a friends typically connection, right? Unless it's just a public page that someone can look at, but I think it would come down to making certain that
what
someone's not connected to the student from the adult to the student side.
What about let's just say my mom's best friend is a teacher here. And I'm friends with her on Facebook and we text message and we do all that.
So I think
We talked about that and we said where it's, the behavior that is unprofessional, inappropriate. So that would be family. We're talking about if,
It's 3 words.
Second.
oh yes,
paragraph.
unprofessional, yes, that's why we added the unprofessional, unauthorized or unwanted.
Okay.
So I know we have a lot of, staff members who might be connected to community members because this is a close community.
Mhm.
So that's why those words are in red, because that was part of our discussion. We talk about what if your best friend is a teacher and they wanted to take your child home, for
Carpool.
practice or something,
Right.
carpool. So we made sure that we identified it's unprofessional, unauthorized, or unwanted.
And we somewhere in here talk about the methods of communication.
We call them out, that they have to be district approved email, the district alert system, or other approved district communication tools. So for our athletes now, we are using Sports U, and email.
We provide coaches with
Coaches.
a district provided email address, which means the coaches are protected and both apply or agree to adhere to the acceptable use policy.
So teachers wouldn't be using like Remind or Sign Up Genius?
No, it has to be approved.
Okay.
Now,
And,
that's what
and
they're
to
going
the compliance,
Sorry.
and to the compliance.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that teachers are and staff are protected.
My takeaway from the
With this, with the NISBA policy,
So this one was adapted from a few different places. We did, Carmen, did we send this one to NISBA? We did. We did. Okay.
And also.
No, our
in-house attorneys as well.
Yes, our attorneys
This is
reviewed
got
this.
double plus.
We pulled this from a few different community. From different schools.
And in policy, spent a lot of time on this. I mean, there was a lot of discussion in policy around this to make sure that they're, I mean, you know, I'm sure there'll be some exception that we find that we have. But I think we tried to really cover it.
What do you, how does the administration update the staff on something like this?
So there is provision within the policy that we have to provide age appropriate or developmentally appropriate training to students. We also have to provide training to staff. So I envisioned that at one of our next faculty meet, our next administrative team meeting, once this is approved, we would update our administrators, we would disseminate that to them to then bring back to their faculties. We probably in the next year want to make sure that we have an all-call gathering, because it's that balance between ensuring that our students feel connected to our staff in that appropriate professional manner. We want our students to feel that they have a connection to a trusted adult within that realm, but without overstepping that bounds of unwanted, unauthorized, professional, and unauthorized. So that requires training. And support.
We all good on this one for the first reading?
Yeah. Right, so those will come back on our November 29th meeting, which wasn't originally on the calendar. We've added this meeting, because we needed more time for that discussion. Is there any board comments, new business that needs to happen this evening? We can all hold for Phil. After they.
I have something. I just want to share that, in the high school PTSA meeting on Monday. And Mike joined, which was great. He got to meet a lot of our very passionate parents that do another group that does a lot for our kids. And they actually had a career fair. I do feel that I missed, but this is really important. But I want to thank them for doing that. I'm looking for my notes. Hold on a second. When we were at that meeting, PTA advocacy gave an update. I'd like to find my notes because I don't want to say the wrong thing. There's so much paper. I'm so sorry. We were a bus patrol update, but it wasn't about a bus patrol. This was interesting. And I don't know if we know this yet, Jeremy. I'm not sure if you know this yet. Westchester County put out an RFP for this.
Yes.
And, there are multiple people that put in for the RFP. If Westchester County does not choose bus patrol, and it's possible that they won't, we kind of have to start over with all the technology on our buses. So I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer, but I think it's important for the community to know that is a possibility right now. I think PTA advocacy is working and they have some letters and they sent an email this week outlining some of this to the community. So just something to keep in the back of our mind. You know, Bus Patrol did this. It was no expense to us, right? So.
And if I understand correctly, no matter who is awarded this contract, it will be a no cost to the district. We would have to start over, one, ripping all of the stuff out the bus patrol put in, and then being in line from every other district that wants that. So it'd be very beneficial if bus patrol was selected in terms of having two districts, us and Somers, already online and ready to just start disseminating information. And I think, if I understand correctly, that we are. What's that?
I'm just saying, like, they put in a lot of work.
Oh,
The
I
ones
know.
that generated.
We're right right there, I think, so the RFP's closed, they're doing the final sets of interviews right now. I mean, it's like any day, hopefully sooner than later, it's been a long ride.
Yeah, I just thought of it, that was important to share.
Yes.
Have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
All in favor?